right, welcome back to episode 14 of my East Coast Fitness Podcast, and I'm your host, Mark Lewis. Today I have another very special guest with me. I feel like he definitely demonstrates the values of my podcast, and the values are that I feel like I want to be able to inspire, educate, and motivate people, and I feel like this is the new direction that I'm taking with the podcast. For those who have been following my podcast for a little bit on Spotify, I used to do more educational-based content, and I found that just kind of got old. So now my goal is the podcast, like I said, taking a different direction. I want to get people on who I feel meet the values of this podcast, and Ty definitely does that. So I'll actually let you introduce yourself.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you, Mr. Mark Lewis, for that intro. My name is Ty Minholz, and I am very, very happy and honored to be part of my first ever podcast. So,
We'll be your last. So where are you from?
I am born and raised in Kitchener, Ontario. All my life, born and raised.
Okay, and I guess like how long have you been training for? Just so people can have an idea of kind of like your experience and just
Yeah. Well, to put it in a nutshell, I started training, just like training in general, weight training since when I started in high school, grade 12, 18, to get in shape for track and field. And as I kind of progressed, I took training seriously after I competed the first time in men's physique in 2015. And then I competed again in 2017. And then I said, okay, I'm really going to step it up. And 2021, I'll be competing in my classic physique debut. So altogether, including just like beginner basic weight training, going on about 9-10 years already now.
10 years. Wow. So I guess why did you want to go, like you said, you started because you were trying to get in shape for track and field, but I guess like, why did you decide to not do, or to take the different direction with your training and say like, I want to do it for more of a sport based to something more like competing? Like what was the mind shift, or what was your focus change to the reason why you took the direction that you did, do you think?
Well, mainly for what it was is, as well to add to, was just a confident booster in myself. To put it in a nutshell, I was diagnosed at 5 years old with Tourette's syndrome, and that comes with OCD, ADD, and a whole pile of other neurological conditions. So aside for track and field, I decided to do also weight training just to keep my mind focused on myself, give myself some confidence, obviously get bigger and stronger. And, after track and field was gone, I found bodybuilding, and I found an organization that allows bodybuilders and men's physique competitors to compete, which was formerly the Ontario Physique Association, which is now the Canadian Physique Alliance, and competed the first time and found love with it. So yeah, it's
So I guess in terms of your fitness goals right now, like what would you say your biggest goal is? Would that be to kind of get ready for the competing season where you're going to be competing in 2021? Is that kind of like your major goal right now? Is everything kind of like leading up to that, would you say?
Yeah, like right now, 2021 is the goal. I'm going to wait till probably in the fall, because I'd like to compete in the fall where my schedule is not too hectic.
Yeah.
Just to give myself some cushion time. And yeah, like right now I'm just focusing on a good long off season.
Yeah.
This class physique requires to be obviously a little bit bigger and more striated. So I'm just focusing on that, and we'll see what shows are going to pop up next year. So I'm just going to keep grinding right now at the off season, and yeah.
Okay. So I guess I think that was a pretty good introduction. So in terms of me, I kind of started a little bit differently. I was originally started to lose a bunch of weight. Like I was more of a weight loss thing. And I mean, probably a lot of people can relate to that, and they just kind of go to the gym because they want to lose weight. And then it kind of turned more into, I was always involved with sports growing up. Like I always played like high school hockey and just different various hockey associations and like leagues and stuff like that. I was playing like golf and soccer as a kid as well. So I was always kind of like, I wouldn't say athletic, but I was like always involved with sports, and I was always around, like I was in hockey schools and training camps for hockey. So I kind of got exposed to a little bit of the conditioning part of it. And then basically what happened is after I graduated, I started to go into university, and I basically started putting on a bunch of weight, and I got up to probably around 260 pounds. And that's just kind of where I said, enough's enough. And I just kind of wanted to make a change. And that's kind of where it all started for me. Was I just decided to go out. This was around the summertime, and I decided to go for walks every day just because it was easy, and I didn't want to go down. Just like most people, they jump into a gym pass, and then you don't know whether or not you're going to stick with it. So it's like I didn't want to go buy a gym pass and like not stick with it, because being in university, I was kind of tight on money. So I basically just started going for walks, and then the walks just ended up getting longer, and then the walks turned into runs, and then eventually I was probably down like, I don't know how much, maybe 15 pounds. And then I decided to join the gym. So then I basically just started going consistently, and then the gym that I was training at, we're going to get more into this in the podcast, but the gym that I was training at, there was a couple people there that were kind of involved with bodybuilding, and you can kind of just notice some people in the gym, like based on what their goals are, depending on what they're training. If somebody's benching and they're doing 3 reps of 5 sets, you can kind of say, well, they might be more of a power lifter. Then you get the people that are in there in their tank tops that are maybe doing bodybuilding. So I just kind of like got around those people a little bit. And then in terms of that, it just, that's where it all started for me. It was just, I found my love for bodybuilding just from general weight loss. So that's kind of how it popped off for me. So many of you might have got the impression what this podcast is already about, but just to kind of say it out loud. So the focus of the podcast today is going to be competing in a bodybuilding show, kind of basically what it takes. But the most important thing is as a natural athlete or as a natural lifter, just because both of us have never really touched any type of anabolics or any type of performance enhancing, I guess you would say, or anything that's really banned. So we wouldn't be able to speak from that perspective. And I mean, in terms of, that's a personal decision whether or not you choose to do it or not. But based on our experiences and based on our what we want to do is we want to compete naturally. So that's kind of what the basis of the podcast is going to be. It's going to be competing in bodybuilding shows as a natural, and we're going to kind of go through the process of kind of like what it takes in terms of just what's expected of you for the shows, like what kind of things you have to prepare for, basically like the training process, the diet, the mindset. So those are just a couple things that we're going to be covering in the podcast. I'm sure we're kind of going to get a little bit deeper into it as we go, and there'll probably be more topics because it just forces natural conversation. But I think the first thing that we should discuss before we actually get into the topics itself is, I think a lot of people have a lot of weird expectations when it comes to natural lifters. And I think like you look at people and like, if you're not involved in the bodybuilding community and you look at somebody, whether or not like they're doing a bodybuilding show, people automatically just assume that they're using anabolics just because, oh, well, that guy's using anabolics. And that absolutely takes zero hard work or zero effort or whatever. People just assume it's the drugs that are doing it. But these people, like, let's say you're a natural. I guess what I'm trying to say is, as a natural, like what can you expect as a natural in terms of just like doing your first show, or what should you expect from like a muscle building perspective, or just like how would, like, what are your thoughts on that in terms of just like being a natural and like having expectations?
Well, first and foremost, going natural is definitely, to my opinion, again, this is all based on my opinion, to each his own. Definitely start natural. Give yourself a solid base, a solid natural base, because your muscles need time to recoup and recover naturally. And obviously, with the use of PEDs, that's speeded up, obviously, but personally, I would definitely stay natural. Give your body a lot of time to grow naturally, see how everything responds. And guys, there's nothing wrong with competing naturally at all. You know what? Don't worry about, the spotlight not being on natural bodybuilding. Don't worry about the peer pressure about doing drugs. The main thing for me is that you just do it for yourself. You don't do it for nobody else. It's for yourself. It's your body. It's your own mind. It's your health, and it's your goal. So, if you want to stay natural your whole entire life, hey, I'm all for it. And of course, if you want to take, if you want to open up that next door, go for it. Like I said, I have no disrespect for those that are not unnatural. Again, to each his own. But definitely for the first at least 10 years, stay natural and compete in natural shows, and see where it goes from there.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because there's a couple things that I want to bring up that remind me, but things that come to mind when I think of this. And I think the biggest thing is, I've heard people say that like, oh, well, I got to do steroids, or I got to do testosterone, or I got to do some type of drugs because I've reached my natural limit. And it's like, I can't get it. And it's like, these guys have been in the gym for like 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean? It's like, there's no way in hell that you've reached your natural limit in 2 to 3 years of training. And I think people use it as an excuse to do it. It's like, I think if you're going to do something like that, that's not the basis of this podcast. Is not that. But just to kind of like put it into perspective, I think a lot of people use it as an excuse that they don't want to wait. They don't have the patience. It's like, and I think that as a natural, it's like, you've got to do it for you got to do it from like longevity and like as a lifestyle, because as a natural, if you're competing, it's 100% a lifestyle. Whereas if you're doing it like you're doing performance enhancing drugs or steroids or whatever you're doing, or testosterone, it can become less of a lifestyle and more of like a short-term goal, because who knows, like it might not be something you're interested in, and you could jump in it too early and then find out that it's not for you. And then you're stuck with you're stuck with your consequences of your actions, right? So I think from like going back to what you said, I think it makes 100% sense to wait it out and see that way. But another thing that comes to my mind is people like placing like limitations on themselves just because they don't think that they can achieve something naturally. And they place those limitations right on themselves right away, that they can't achieve that, or they're not able to do that. And I think that's just like setting yourself up for failure, because if you're placing those things upon you, then like, of course you're not going to achieve it. Of course you're not going to, it's like setting long-term goals versus short-term goals. You know what I mean? It's like, you look at bodybuilders and you're like, I'm never going to look that way unless I do some type of performance enhancing drugs. But it's like, don't think of it that way. Think about what you can possibly achieve by not doing it. And like, look at the positives of not doing it versus like looking at the negatives. And I think a lot of people immediately do that and they jump to the negatives right off the bat. And everybody knows how important genetics are, and like anabolics aren't going to change your genetics. So you should never really use the excuse that I have bad genetics, so I'm basically just going to start, I think I should probably do a cycle, or I should probably do whatever, right? So it's like, there really isn't an excuse. And to kind of summarize this point, is goes back to what you said, and you just have to do it for yourself. Like, no matter what you're doing in terms of the gym, you have to remember like why you started, why it's important to you. And if you choose to do it, then that's up to you. But as long as you're doing it for the right reasons and you're doing it because it's important to you, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is it goes back down to yourself, that you're not doing it to impress other people. You're not doing it just to take the quick route, which in your 20s, and even in your 19, when you're 19, 18, or even in your 20s, it's a very attractive thing, because you're able to get a certain result much quicker. And you know what I mean? So it's like, you look better when you're younger, I guess you'd say. But I think that waiting it out and playing the waiting game and being a natural. And another thing I'd like to add is the challenge of being a natural too, because with a natural athlete comes a lot more challenges. And I think you got to look at those challenges as like ways to be the best version of yourself you can. Like, how can I overcome this? Like, maybe my recovery isn't as great as somebody, but like, how can I overcome that? Right.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
So I think, yeah. So in terms of like recovery, like so I just want to, before we actually dive into like the show stuff, how important do you think like managing your training volume is as a natural lifter?
Oh, it's extremely important. I mean, just to sum it up, the training, the diet, and the recovery as a natural athlete, natural bodybuilder athlete in general, is super, super important, because, you know, you need more recovery when you're natural, whereas as someone who is on performance enhancing drugs, they could train that muscle again the next day, because everything is so fast, it's so quick in responding for recovery. But as a natural, your muscles take longer to recover. Your CNS takes a lot more time to recover as well. So that's why I always say, when you're a beginner, I would start probably 3 days a week, 4 days a week, have a rest period in between each day to recover. And then as you advance, do a 5-day split and 2 days off. Give yourself a weekend to relax. And if you really want to take it seriously, still do the same, but don't binge on junk food the whole weekend. Give your body proper nutrients. If you're not training, definitely add more water and more protein, because again, protein is the building block of muscle, which speeds up recovery. And it's just going to add more recovery to your CNS and your muscles, and then you'll be fresh to go in the week. So I would definitely add as much recovery days as you need. If you ever wake up in the morning or if you're not feeling up the training or you still feel sore, take an extra rest day because you're going to need it when you're a natural lifter, natural
Yeah.
athlete. More recovery and the more sleep you get, the better,
Yeah.
because that's where everything shuts down and everything starts to repair itself. So I just think that as a natural athlete, I see a lot of people that just go 7 days a week. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I do that too sometimes, but that's because my body's used to the progressive overload and the torture that I put it through in the gym. But mostly every Sunday I give myself a rest day because I need that recovery for my training. And it helps.
Yeah.
It's beneficial.
Oh yeah, no, I'm the same way with training. Like I'll train 7 days a week sometimes, just because, not because I know it's good for me, just because I know that, like, I just love it, right? So it's like it's hard to keep me out of the gym. So like, like some weeks I just want to go 7 days a week. Other days I want to go 6, or sometimes I do 5. But like generally I'm following a pretty, like, I wouldn't say a structured split. I'll get more into that in the podcast in terms of like the training portion of it, just to kind of give you an idea. But yeah, like I think it just comes from like just me loving it. And if you like you're going 7 days a week, that means that you just love being in the gym. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think that people kind of think that like, oh, well, you're just going to be in the gym and you're going to be not building muscle. You're going to be like breaking down muscle because you're not giving yourself enough time to recover. And recovery is really important. But at the end of the day, it's enjoyment. You know what I mean? Like as long as you're not in there training something that already hurts and you could set yourself up for an injury, because you definitely don't want to do that. But if it's just you're going in to train something because you enjoy training, I think that's great. And I think whatever gets you in the gym in the first place is awesome, whether or not you're competing or you're just doing it for fun as well. Because I mean, that's kind of where it all starts. It's just doing it for fun or doing it to like as a challenge. So yeah, is there anything you'd like to add on just kind of like what you'd want to expect, or just people placing like limitations on themselves? Like, do you have any type of example, like anything that comes to mind, or just before we kind of move into the competing part?
Yeah, with limitations, man, don't put any freaking limitations on yourself, and not only bodybuilding, but in life, your job, school, whatever. Because you know what? At the end of the day, when you set yourself up for limitations, you're setting yourself up for failure already before you even start the process. And example for me, I don't have the best genetics for this sport. I already knew that from the beginning, but I did not let that limitate me, because psychologically I know I was born for this sport and I love this sport. I love the lifestyle. My mindset's already there. You have to set up your mind. If your mind is not with what you're doing, then no matter how well your body's responding, if you're mentally not there, you're not gonna succeed. So you need to really mentally build yourself up to block out all those limitations. It's psychologically taxing, man. It can be,
Oh, yeah.
especially like when we dive into the podcast more of in prep. But don't set yourself up from a limitation. Like, just in general, this whole generation is not limitless anymore. They're putting too much limitations on themselves.
Well, I think
Stop that.
that comes down to
Stop
social media. That comes down to social media too, right? Because you see people that are doing things like, you know what I mean, like lifting a certain amount of weight, or they look this way all year round, or like whatever it is, like whatever accounts you're following, or like social media influencers. Like, I mean, they're all great, like in terms of just being able to provide motivation, but they can also demotivate you in the same way, because you don't have their same lifestyle. You don't live the same life they do. And like they all do different things, and but I mean, people only really post, like some people only really post content when they're in a good mood, and you don't really, not everybody's transparent, right? Not everybody's like, you don't really see necessarily like the ins and outs of what goes on. And like, so I think that in terms of social media, I think that has a lot to do with your mindset. And I think you just do, yeah, and you just need to do it for yourself. Like at the end of the day, I think it's good to have your own goals and not let somebody else impact your goals or have like an influence on your goals, whether it be like a family, a friend, like everybody. Like, I know bodybuilding is not the most like encouraging sport. Like, if you were to tell your parents, or you were to tell like a loved one that you're doing bodybuilding, it's kind of like not necessarily looked upon the greatest. But I mean, I think it should be, because like anything that you do in life takes like hard work and patience and like consistency. And I mean,
time.
I think, and time, yeah. So it's like patience, hard work, and consistency. It's like that's the formula. That's the formula for that's the formula for success, or whatever people would say, right? Like if you apply those 3 things in any aspects of your life, like you're bound to get better, or you're bound to stick to it. And I think bodybuilding teaches that, but a lot of people don't see that, right? A lot of people don't understand like that you have to eat those meals, or you have to eat this certain way, or you can't, if you go to eat, you kind of got to watch what you eat, and you kind of got to like train a certain way. So it's like, I think a lot of people miss that. And I think that bodybuilding kind of gets a bad rep for those who don't really know or have never done it, right?
Yep, you nailed it right on the head. You nailed the hammer on the head right there. Yep.
Because I remember when I told my parents I was doing a bodybuilding show, like they were just completely disappointed, right? Like, not, I wouldn't say disappointed, but they weren't happy. Let's just put it that way. They were like, that's a lot of time and a lot of effort. Like, are you sure? Blah 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 blah. And
Can be
then,
very sweet. Yep.
yeah. So, but I mean, that's, you just kind of have to do it for yourself, and that just kind of summarizes that point. So,
Yeah, that's all that matters. Do it for you. That's it. Those 4 little words.
Yeah. Okay. So let's now move into the meat and bones of the podcast. I just kind of wanted to throw that in because I thought that was kind of important, just from a value perspective. And I think a lot of people are just kind of like stuck within that area of just limitations. So yeah, the first one that I want to go over is just, I think in terms of like competing, like you're probably, a lot of people kind of know like is aware of it and they know it exists. But I guess the biggest thing is like, how do you find out if competing is right for you? So how I want to start this off is I want to kind of go over both like why we compete. So like, why do you compete, or why do you choose to compete?
I compete because I love challenging myself, man. I love the sport in general. I love the way the finished product looks. I just like being fit. And my ultimate dream, I mean, we all want to become natural pros, but that is a good dream for, but my ultimate dream, my ultimate goal is to definitely compete on the Arnold amateur stage and even the Olympia amateur stage in the years to come. But all in all, I love it because I love the sport. I love the people that are in the sport that make it so grand and so motivating. So yeah, that's why.
So basically, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like, just like once you kind of get involved with the sport, I feel like it's kind of like, it's addicting, right? It's almost like a drug. It's like a drug on its own, just like going to the gym. Because like once you get involved with it and once you start seeing progress, it becomes really motivated and to kind of go back and keep going and giving it your all. And as you see your body change, you're like, oh my God, like it's working, right? Or like once you kind of get your training and diet in check, it's pretty crazy what you can do and how your body responds. So basically, like why I compete is just I think like my why is basically because I love the challenge and I love the lifestyle. I'm very like I wouldn't say competitive, but I definitely want to. I not be better than other people, but I want to work hard at something. And bodybuilding allows me to like work hard and gets like allows me to work hard and get results. So I kind of like the challenge of it, and I kind of like improvement, like self improvement. And I find that like it allows me to do that because it allows me to make mistakes and realize what those mistakes are and then better myself from them. Because every bodybuilding show you're going to do is not going to be perfect. Like there's going to be ups and downs. And it's just about how you deal with that. And it all depends on like, you could come in one bodybuilding show, you could do everything perfect and not come in the way that you want. And then the other time, like you could have to bring up your legs or bring up your arms, or so there's always like, it's always ever changing. And it's like never final. Like you could do this for the rest of your life and never really reach, you know what I mean? You're like what you were looking to reach, because like it's just everything's constantly changing. And I like that. Like I like the competitive nature of just like having that challenge for myself, having something that I know that like that will challenge me, I guess, is to kind of the reason to why I compete. And I just like honestly just beating everybody else. Like like that's why I'm up there. I'm not up there to just be like, oh, I lost a crap ton of weight. Like, look at me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking at the guy next to me and being like, I want to beat him, or like, I want to place higher than him. So it's like from that competitive, like I'm very competitive when it comes to that, right? So, and I'm not saying you have to compete to beat the guy next to you. If you're doing it just because you enjoy it, that's fine. But there's two different things, right? There's the guy that wants to win, and there's the guy that doesn't really care if he wins. He already won because he got to the show.
Oh yeah.
So, so that's kind of why I do. But what I think, why do you? I guess from a perspective of somebody else, how do you think? How would you find out whether or not competing is right for you? If you were to,
yeah, definitely. Well, there's definitely a couple things. One is that if you really, talk to people around your local gym, talk to trainers, even coaches around your gym that have coached people that have competed, ask their experiences. And, definitely get in contact with those that have competed around your local gym. Second of all, I would definitely go to a show with them just as a spectator to really look to see, like, what really goes into it, the posing, the dieting, and all that stuff, and just the really disciplined aspects of competing. And third of all, if you can, and if you can afford it, I would say the Toronto Pro Super Show, if you're around the area, the Toronto Pro Super Show or even the Vancouver Pro Show, they have expos there. Go to that. Like, put yourself out there, meet other athletes. It doesn't matter what level they're at, IFBB Pro or amateur or regional. Get to know people and ask the questions, ask how they experience it, and follow them on Instagram and their social media. And that can be very motivating. And if it is for you, then go for it. If not, then if you just like if you like the lifestyle but not competing, that's okay too. But just try one of those three things out, and they may even spark your mind to get on stage one day. So yeah, those three things I think are absolutely amazing to see if it's right for you.
Yeah, I would totally agree, and I think I did it like the opposite way. So just to kind of I think 100% you should totally do what you said. I would say that that's the way. But I necessarily, I didn't do that myself. So kind of how I started was I just jumped right in the fire. I just decided if it was right for me by just doing it. And I'm kind of I'm very I got a go-to attitude sometimes. Sometimes I'll do things just to do them without doing any type of research. So for me first, it was just I didn't really know. And that's kind of why I thought it'd be interesting to do this podcast, because it's I kind of wish I had some type of, I'm sure there's material out there just similar to this kind of material, but I wish I would have found it, or I wish I would have listened to it before, because there's a lot of things I didn't know when I first competed that I wish I did know. And like I said, that's kind of the topics found in this podcast is what we're going to go over. But I just basically, what I meant was I just jumped myself in the fire. I basically just I found somebody who was a coach at the gym, and I hired him, and then I decided to do a show, and the show was I don't even know. I think it was 16 weeks or something. And I was fairly overweight. I wasn't even near where I should have been, but I didn't know, right? Because I didn't know what it took to really, I didn't know the level of conditioning you have to have in order to be up on that stage. So I did it I just started the show, I signed up, and that was it. That's how I found out if it was for me or not. I just completely immersed myself in it without actually looking into it, without going to a show first. And then as I was going through the prep, I learned everything slowly. My coach would tell me things here's what we're going to do here. And then I would be curious. So I'd ask questions. But I wouldn't say I was completely oblivious to the process, because I did follow, I think another great way, a free way to do it is to go on YouTube and watch prep series. And I think depending on what you're into, if you're into natural bodybuilding, that's kind of what I'm expanding to in terms of my YouTube channel. I do have a series on that. But there's also other people, if you're interested in prep series, there's tons of them available on YouTube, and just watch somebody else and just kind of put yourself in their shoes and just see whether or not it's going to, I like the process from start to finish, and just think about it. If you could do something like that, would that be something you're interested in doing? And just being able to eat the meals, being able to cut the calories, being able to do the cardio. And I think that that's another free way of just kind of just seeing what it's I guess, right? And then I think to hit home on your point, I think going to a show, and the biggest thing is just communicating with people who've done it, asking them questions, figuring out the things that they like, the things that they didn't like why they do it, and then just kind of see if you're on the same plan, right? In terms of just aligning your, I think another thing that we didn't mention was goals, right? What are your goals? Are you just, maybe competing isn't right for you if your goals are just to maintain? Do you know what I mean? If you've lost the weight and you're happy where you're at, then getting on the stage is probably not for you, because you're going to have to get down significantly lower. Not everybody, I don't walk around at 160 pounds, you know what I mean? Or 165 pounds. But in order for me to get up on the stage, it would seem that I would have to get down to about 165 pounds. Because when I did my first show, I was 167, 168. And I just never thought that was possible. I was never that low until I was I think it was junior high school, maybe. I might have been that heavy. Not in high school for sure. I was heavier than that in high school. But I think that you just don't, if you're just okay with who you are and what you are now, then maybe it's not necessary for you to take it to the next level. But so that's kind of what I would kind of just add on that. So do you have anything else you'd like to kind of add on Anything that comes to mind in terms of like competing and just like if it's right for you?
No, but definitely what you said, it flew over my head. But like you said, free resources, YouTube videos, like you said,
Yeah.
and yeah, to just look at some prep series from like the CPA or whatever organization, and learn from that. Just take notes, and but yeah, everything else kind of flows into place, you know. So those
Yeah.
are definitely resources and good tools to definitely help to make you think if competing is right for you or not.
Yeah. And I think another thing is people not getting out of their element, right? Like being, maybe they're too shy. Maybe they don't really want to get up there with like posing trunks on. Like maybe they're just not comfortable, right? So I
And
think
that's yeah.
yeah. So I think like in order to be able to get out of your comfort zone, like I think it takes a lot to be able to kind of, you know what I mean, get up on that stage with like the bodybuilding posing trunks on. Like even like, I mean, the board shorts are different because like it's basically like a bathing suit. Not saying there's nothing wrong with that, but like you're not exposing, like you're only really exposing your upper body and like you can't really see your legs. But like once
Yeah.
you get on with that little like tight, like even the classic, right?
Yeah, they're
One.
short, gotten short. Yep.
Yeah, and like if you, I know, remember the first time I put them on, I was like, I have to get on stage with these.
Yeah.
Like these
I
look
know,
like I'm
right?
wearing like, you know what I mean, like really extremely tight underwear. Like there's absolutely nothing to hide.
Yeah.
And
And then
like
you're
the
making
body,
you're
yeah,
checking front to back to make sure everything is pulled down properly. Yeah.
yeah, that's the
I
worst, right? You go out there and you do some public indecency and then you leave,
and
and you didn't even realize that you did it. So, but the bodybuilding ones, those are worse, right? Those are even tighter. They're just just like a little tiny strip of fabric, right?
yeah. And again, like that, I mean, even with the bikini competitors, you know, the female side, that takes a lot of to get out of your comfort zone to do that. So,
Yeah.
so you know, it's just like for that stuff, you definitely have to start early and get yourself comfortable. Get yourself comfortable with seeing yourself in those pieces of material in the mirror, and
Yeah.
then you know, eventually it'll be like having your friend video it, or your family video it, or your friends, and then you know, just getting used to that, because mentally that could be really traumatic as well for someone else, right? So it's definitely good to just to practice with those things on to get yourself more comfortable and confident, right?
Yeah. I think it's just like preparing yourself in advance, right? Just knowing that you're going to have to do it. And then not when you're like 6 weeks out and then you order your shorts and then they come in and you're like, oh my God.
Yep,
Like
exactly.
just know what to expect. Like know that you're going to have to be, you're going to have to feel comfortable when you're uncomfortable. Right.
Exactly.
So
Preparation is key, even for the fabric.
yeah. So I think that actually segues nicely into our next point. You mentioned that preparation is key. So in terms of preparing for the show, I kind of want to go over that. So just to kind of give you an idea of the summary topics, what we're going to do is we're going to move now into kind of like what to expect for your show, and then we're going to kind of go over the training. Then we're going to move into the nutrition, and then we're going to kind of get more into the mental side, and then just some things maybe to do like what you should consider after the show. So I guess now let's talk about a little bit of the shows. So I think in terms of like, I think choosing your class is like extremely important. I think like that's the first decision. So like now you've found out, so let's take this through the whole process here. You decide that you want to compete, you find out that it's right for you, you're interested in it, you're a natural, and you want to get on that stage. So I guess now it comes down to which class do you want to compete in? So in terms of the natural federation, I remember when I was doing, the first show that I did was the Atlantic Classics in New Brunswick. And that was, I was in an untested show. So I was a natural athlete in an untested show. I knew that I was going to get blown out of the water. I didn't know, but I was expecting the worst because I knew that there'd be people in there that would obviously be using because it was an untested show. So I basically just kind of, and that goes back to why I did it. I just did it for a challenge. And I didn't want to place, like going back to my competitive nature with my first show. It's like I just wanted to get my feet wet and figure out what was right for me. So placing wasn't really on my mind. And the fact that I was able to put all that hard work in and still not place, do you know what I mean? It just shows like the level of effort that I was willing to give. So I think in terms of your class, that's kind of why where I was going with this was in terms of unnatural. So they just have men's physique, and do they have that middle classic physique as well?
Oh
with
yeah,
natural?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. The CPA's had it for quite a while now.
Okay, because I don't think the WNBF does.
I do not think so. I think it just says bodybuilding. Don't quote me classic bodybuilding, but I'm not. Don't quote me on that. But I know it doesn't say classic physique. I
Yeah.
know. I do know that the UFE does because I have a few friends that compete in UFE, which is another federation for testing and non-tested. You could do either or, and they do have that there as well.
Okay, so let's just go under the assumption because you know for a fact that they have it in the CPA. I'm not sure if they do have it in the WNBF. The reason why I say that is because when I was working with my coach, who is Patrick McGinnis, I'll throw his thing up there so you can check him out on the screen when I'm editing the video or the podcast. But yeah, basically what he said was that he's a physique pro. So he's a natural physique. He won his pro card in the physique. So just to kind of give you an idea, it's like when you win a pro card, you only win obviously it makes sense, but I didn't really realize this. But whatever division you compete in, you only earn your pro card in that division, right? So like he's a physique pro. Now he wants to be the pro. He wants to be the bodybuilding pro. So now he's got to compete in bodybuilding and earn his pro card in bodybuilding. So you can have like 3 pro cards. Like if you wanted to have like a physique pro, you could have a classic physique pro, and then you could have a bodybuilding. So it's like it's possible to kind of work your way up, right? So like he started and he did men's physique, and he won his pro card. So he's competing again in men's physique, but someday he wants to make the transition to bodybuilding. So to kind of summarize what I was saying was when I was in contact with him and I was telling him I wanted to switch organizations and I wanted to go from the CPA. We'll get more into organizations once we kind of go in. But I told him that I wanted to compete into the CPA. And then he mentioned that there was no classic physique in the WNBF because I wanted to switch organizations to the WNBF. And he mentioned that there was none, so I would have to make the step up to bodybuilding, but I wanted to do that anyways. So it wasn't an issue for me. So let's just kind of back up a little bit in terms of the major questions. So let's go for the three major classes. So you got your men's physique, you got your men's classic physique, and then you've got your bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So can you just kind of give like an overview before we get into figuring out which one's right for the person who wants to compete? I think they need to know a little bit about them. So how would you describe men's physique, classic physique, and bodybuilding? How would you describe all 3? Just to kind of put it, just a summary.
Yeah, to put it in a nutshell, we'll start with men's physique. Since I started with men's physique, again, fabric-wise, board shorts, basic. Men's physique, they're mainly looking for the V-taper, which is the broad shoulders, the wide back, the small waist, and as well as the chest. Arms, yeah, they do look at the arms, but not as much as the chest, shoulders, and back and waist ratio. So that's pretty basic. Classic.
One second, I got a question for you. So in terms of the men's physique, do they look at your legs at all? Like what I mean by that is like the calves.
No, not really.
So if you had, so I guess what my question is like if there was 2 men's physique people, let's say it was me and you were the same size as me, we were very comparable, and we were competing. I had really good calves and you didn't. Like would that potentially put the favor more in my position, or is that just something completely that they don't look at whatsoever?
As far as I know, again, when I competed in 15, 17, they didn't look at that. I don't know if they do now, but I know the main area that they judge is upper half.
Yeah, the V-taper and the upper. The abs, I think, is a big thing too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Conditioning of your, I mean, it's important in anyone that you compete in, but I think for men's physique, it's extremely important because like it's the beach body look, right? It's not like everything's got to be in proportion. Everything's got so that slim waist with those nice set of abs. And I think a lot of people get that messed up too. It's like your abs are determined by your genetics, right? So whether or not you got a 4-pack or whether or not you got a 6-pack or an 8-pack, like you can't change that. Like that's
where your muscles insert, and you can't change that, right? So.
Yeah. So anyways, that kind of summarized physique. So would you kind of go into classic physique and then the bodybuilding, just kind of give an overview of those?
Yes, well, classic physique as well as bodybuilding, they're looking at the whole body, front to back, side, angles, proportion. Classic physique, they're looking. Classic physique was designed for like back in the golden era, like the 60s, 70s, 80s, the Arnold, Franco Colombo days, the Ed Corney, as well. So they're looking for that aesthetic finesse look. So again, with the really broad shoulders and the small waist, but now you're getting into the flaring legs. They're looking for more of that X frame. So it's more like this, and not so blocky, but all finesse and aesthetic, and definitely calves. You will have to train your calves a lot more to get into that division, guys. So I'm sorry, but you got to step up your calves. Yeah, bodybuilding, again, it's a little more. I want to say extreme, but it's
one thing I'd like to add. So in terms of like the men's classic physique, they normally do it by weight. They normally do it by weight and height.
Yes. Weight and height is categories for class physique and bodybuilding. Men's physique is just height. That's all it is. Height, just men's physique. Weight, you have to make weight. We have to make weight for your specific class for class physique and bodybuilding. Yes.
Yeah, because a lot of people say they outgrow. Like I think with bodybuilding, if you're doing open, like if you're doing open bodybuilding, then there is no height, or there is no weight. It's just like you just get thrown in with your height or whatever, and like whatever you're. So in terms of like being people saying like if you have ever heard someone like Regan Grimes said this. I don't know if anyone knows who he is. You obviously know who Regan Grimes is. But I remember he said that the reason why he switched from classic or men's classic was to bodybuilding was because he outgrew classic, right? So basically what he means by that is because, and then I think he was competing in 212, but we're not going to get into that because that's completely irrelevant. But basically what happens, it's like you have a certain height. So when I did my show, it was like I was this height. So that's exactly where I slotted in. It was like it was division. So it was like division A, B, C, D. And then each A, B, C, D aligned to a certain height. So me being 5'10" or 5'11", I don't really know. I think I'm in between. I might be 5'10" and a half, but I think I was in the 5'11" class. And then so 5'11", I can weigh up to this amount.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, but what happens is like once you reach that weight, you either have that's the best you can do, you know what I mean, or you have to be able to jump up to the next bodybuilding, right? So I think that was just kind of an important point. I just kind of wanted to add. With the classic physique. So, and then your shorts obviously change too. You get like, I'll put a picture of the screen up there of the shorts just so you have an idea. Same thing with the men's physique. I'll throw the men's physique. I'll throw each of the shorts up on the screen so you can see them. But yeah, I just like to add to that. So now going to bodybuilding a little bit. Like what do you think the major difference is between physique and bodybuilding?
Are you talking about class physique and bodybuilding or?
Yeah, classic physique.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool. Just want to.
A lot of people are stuck between that, right? They're like, well, what's the difference? Like, maybe I should do classic physique, or maybe I should do bodybuilding. It's like, what do you think the deterrent factor is? Like, what's going to be able to kind of make sense for somebody, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just wanted to clarify for once it does go on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure.
Exactly. Bodybuilding is more based on, again, proportion as well. Muscle mass, as well as your conditioning, as well as proportion, as well as density. And again, Ashley, you're wearing the trunks, as they call them, the posing trunks. So you're actually showing your glutes, which they do look at too. Again, that could be very uncomfortable for some people, but that's okay. If it's good for you, it's not. But that is just what they're looking for, muscle mass along with your conditioning and density and proportion, and as well as how you, I'm sure this will be getting into the next subject, how you pose with that physique. And so, yeah, it's definitely a lot more muscle mass related.
Yeah.
With bodybuilding too, you definitely want to try and keep not a very slim waist, but a good slim waist. You definitely don't want to be too blocky. Otherwise that whole image can throw off your whole physique. So you definitely want to stay a little very lean in the midsection.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so now that we've kind of covered the thing, just to kind of summarize this topic, I guess like as quick and as easy as you can say it, how would you find out which one's right for you? How do you find out which one you should compete in?
The one thing, definitely, to definitely start up is basically what your goals are, how much you want to weigh, what your weight you want to look at, how you want to look in this, how you want to look at that certain weight. And again, like I said, going back to seeing if it's right for you, go see each division, see how each one performs, and then check and see, hey, I want to do class physique because I like the posing. I like that there's posing, you can pose to music. Okay, great. Definitely study them, and definitely, if there is a coach at the gym, maybe do like an evaluation of saying, hey, this is where you're at. And are you comfortable with being here or here? So just kind of have that second opinion of a coach at the gym to kind of guide you through of which division will be right for you and one that you can excel in if you definitely want to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think that 100% makes sense. The only thing that I would like to add on that is I just think that like it comes back to passion, and I think you should compete in what you're passionate about, right? And something you enjoy. And like the reason why I don't think that's as important maybe as what you said is because it might be your first show. So like you don't really know what your passion is, you know what I mean? So you just need to compete in something that might be right for you. But competing in something that's right for you is not the same as something that you're passionate about. Do you know what I mean? Like you could do really well in like men's classic physique, but like maybe your passion's bodybuilding, right? Maybe that's what you want to. You want to be as big as possible. You want to be Big Ramy. You know what I mean? Or like you want to be that like big freak. Whereas you get something like William Bonac, who bet Big Ramy, who's like way smaller, but just way more dense, way more defined. I mean, you know what I mean? Just someone who just completely is like bodybuilding to a T, you know what I mean? Then you get like a freak that comes in. So it's like being able to like figure out like which one you're passionate in. I think is very important because it's going to motivate you way more competing in something. Like personally for me, I never competed in it, so I can't really say if I like it, but I don't think men's physique would be something I'm interested in because I want to show off my legs and I don't like the posing. So I would never be interested in competing in men's physique. So like I wouldn't be able to give a prep the same amount of attention as I would if I was doing bodybuilding or if I was doing. So personally for me, it's like I think you got to figure out what you're interested in, and then that just goes back to what you said as well, just doing the research, figuring out, going to the shows, seeing what's required, seeing what the different avenues are in terms of like being able to like for your body type. I think is another important thing. Like, what's your body type? What would look better in? But I think at the end of the day, once you do your first show, determine whether or not you liked it or if you kind of want to compete in something different. And that's kind of where you reevaluate and say, well, no, I really love those bodybuilders. Like next show I'm doing bodybuilding. Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't hurt to make that mistake at the first because everybody does it. When you're new to something, you're going to make mistakes. And I mean, yeah. And I think that's just all experience, right? So.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now that you've kind of picked your class, so whatever the class you choose to compete in, I guess now it's time to find a show. So I guess finding the right show is very important. So there's a couple things I like to touch on. It's just the location, the reputation, the federation, the different type of testing requirements since it is natural. Whereas if you get an untested show like I did, like I mentioned, my first show was untested, so there was no testing. You just showed up, and that's like it is what it is. If you're on something, you're on it, and if you're not, you're not. And then like basically like the past winners and the popularity of the show. So just to kind of start off right at the start, how would you figure out like how would you choose the show if you were new to competing? Like how would you go about looking at shows or looking for shows?
So definitely. And again, being that Canada's biggest organization is the Canadian Physique Alliance, I would definitely start with the local show, someone that's close to you, someone that's not too far, that doesn't allow too much travel time, and you staying at a hotel. And because being a beginner competitor, that can add a lot of stress, and that can ruin your physique. So for me, I found, I don't think it's around anymore after this past year, but they had a show in Kitchener, which was the KWO show held every October, the Oktoberfest Classic. So I did that because it was very local and it was very close. I didn't need to stay at a hotel. I only had to worry about getting there, getting my tan, and getting to the venue. So I would definitely start with as little stress as possible to add to yourself. Start with a local show right in your backyard, or maybe that's somewhere like a little bit across town, but nothing like out of province. You definitely don't want to do that, or definitely way out of the city or somewhere in the province. But like, for example, I'm in Kitchener, I want to compete in Barrie. Nah, try and find an organization, try and find a competition or even an organization like the UFE or the WMBF that is close to your show, that's close to your location as possible.
Yeah.
And then if you do well, then you can say, okay, I definitely want to try going to Guelph or going to Toronto or whatever. And then what you will have to do is definitely finance yourself, because that's going to require a lot more travel time. You have to get a hotel, how long you're going to stay at that hotel, gas, food, extra spending money in case you need an emergency finance. So all that stuff adds up as you progress competing over time and as you get better at it and get exposure to it. But I would definitely start small. Start at a small local show. If you're in Kitchener, there's a show going on in April. I'm just going to say it, the Grimes Classic, which is going to be held.
Yeah, interesting. That's the first one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the first one. It's take part of the Jim Morris Classic, but I'll be there to compete to spectate. But there's a good local show there, and they have one in Guelph as well. So definitely download the competitions list and scan out which one is closer to you, and definitely start with that one. Make it easy on yourself.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think a lot of people don't take in, like, I think a lot of people look at it like when they're looking at shows, they're looking more in terms of like, well, why would I want to compete in a local show, right? Like, I'm already here. I think they make the connection between doing a show and a vacation.
Yeah.
And I think
I want to go compete in the big city.
Yeah. Okay. It's like, oh, I'm from, like, I live right now, I'm in Truro, right? Truro, Nova Scotia.
Right.
And it's like, why would I do a show in Halifax? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just saying that this is what people think. They're like, why would I do a show in Halifax when I can go to Toronto and spend a weekend in Toronto and do a show? And it's like, well, first of all, it's your first show. And I mean, it's going to be the preparation process of doing a show. You're not going to like, between like being so deprived of calories, being so tired, and like having to focus on the show, you're not going to have time to vacation. And I think a lot of people make the distinction, or they make the reference, or not the reference, but they like relate vacations with shows, and it's like that's a complete wrong approach. Like, I think that it's going to completely screw you up, and you're not going to be able to have the time that you think you have. And like, your vacations should be separate. Like, when you're doing a show, that should be the number one goal, is to do the show. Exactly. And then that's it. So like, in terms of doing your first show, once you get a few under your belt, and you've been doing it for a little bit, like, then maybe start expanding and start like saying, well, you know what, I've never competed here before. I wonder who competes here, or what it would be like to compete in, I don't know, like the South America, like the Brazil Arnold Classic, or like Australia, or like some of those crazy places that are like wicked far. But like, I think that, going back to what you said, I think it's very important. I would totally agree with that I think, and that's why I chose to do the Atlantic Classics, which was in Moncton, because that was the closest show to me at the time. And I mean, there is one in Halifax, but I just chose to do the Moncton one because I think Moncton's, like, from where I'm at in Truro, it's probably like an hour, a little over an hour maybe. So it was fairly close. I did get a hotel because I think it's absolutely necessary. If it's like more than a 45-minute drive or something, like, a hotel is a must, because like you're prepping the whole time. You have to have meals. Like, you can't be traveling back and forth. Like, the least thing you want to do is spend time driving, right? So I think like a hotel, like even if you are doing like a semi-local show, like something just on the outskirts of town, I think getting a hotel makes sense. Just, you do have, like, you need to take posing pictures. Like, you need, if you're working with a coach, you need to give them like constant updates. You need to go for like not prejudging, but like the athletes meeting, even before the show. So like, I think that's like, if the show is on Friday, Saturday, which most of them are, you normally have the athletes meeting on Thursday. So you got to be there early for that, or later for that, or whatever it is, right? So I think just being centralized to where the show is absolutely a must. So in terms of like the reputation, like, just kind of going over the federations that we want to, I just thought I want to cover, because I don't really know too much on the other ones. But the CPA versus the WBF, or the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation. So I know that there's a difference in the testing requirements. So with like the CPA, I don't know, I don't think they do, but they don't really do a polygraph. So I heard. Whereas the WNBF, they do a polygraph. So
they do polygraph, and as far as I know from my research, and as far as I know from other friends that have competed in the WNBF, they also do a urine test.
A urine test, okay.
Well, they do both. They do both. CPA, I know for a fact they don't do a polygraph. Again, I'm not bashing the CPA. I'm just going for what I know right now, knowledge-wise. Yeah. And as far as I know for testing, I don't think so. But then again, it's been 3 years since I competed. But as far as I know, no testing. And some shows, maybe not all, but I'm going to say some shows. I'm not too sure. But I definitely know that the WMBF is more strict on the testing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the UFE. The UFE, again, I have two people.
What
I
what is
know.
what is the UFE? Can you just kind of like what is
Yeah,
that?
it's Ultimate Fitness Events. So
Okay.
that's worldwide. That's worldwide. But you have not just the basic classes like physique, class physique and bodybuilding, and for women, bikini, fitness, figure, physique. There's so many categories for women, I tell.
Yeah.
And wellness now, but you have like model, sports model, almost like a Victoria's Secret for women in the UFE. There's so many different divisions, but I like it because it's more diverse and it gives you more options. It gives you a lot more options. And as far as I know, for those guys, there's open and natural. And as far as I know, you get tested for open. I know that for a fact. And yeah, for the polygraph and urine test for the WMBF.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's kind of like he knows more about that than I do. Considering I did the CPA, which was the organization that I competed in. But there is a registration fee, like no matter what show. I think that's another thing. Like we're gonna I think that actually kind of translates most into like what we should talk about now, in terms of things that you're gonna need for the show. I think this is a good segue, because like a registration fee or like to join a federation, that's one of the charges you're gonna have to be responsible for. I think it was like $115 to join like an organization. And that's due like every single year. So that's something I didn't really know when I first did it. I thought like obviously I knew that it would be like organized into like a federation and I'd have to sign up for something. But I think a lot of people don't really know a lot. So let's kind of move into the things that you're going to need for the show. So there's a couple things that come to my mind. So the first thing I think we kind of went over with the finding the right category for you. So you have physique. So you're going to need some type of like posing trunks. So if you're competing in like physique or you're competing in classic, there's certain websites you can order them on, and you can get them. So I highly encourage everybody to like look into those, and definitely order those early. And if you want to get something like custom, then definitely make sure that it meets the requirements of the show, and that like it's completely fine for for the show requirements, I guess you should say. And then also like the tan. I think like normally what happens is like they put like the tan on by, so like every show has got like a person who does the tan. So basically like you can't, like you book the tan through the website. Is kind of what I did, was like, here's who's tanning everybody, and then you basically call them up and they slot you in. And then in terms of like the venue stuff, there's also like you have to be able to like afford the show. I think that's the biggest thing. So could you just kind of explain some of the costs of the shows that kind of comes to mind in terms of just like the overall cost of like the trunks, the tans, everything for the venue, the food, like just basically everything that comes to mind for the cost of a show?
Yeah, man, there's so much elements, man. I'm telling you, this sport is expensive. But then again, if you love it and you're passionate about it, that's all that matters. That's not even going to phase you. The membership for CPA is $125 now for the calendar year, and registration fee is. I don't know the exact price. I'm just going to say what you have to pay for it. You got a registration fee, as you said. The tanning that we have is done by a company just off in Waterloo there called Absolute Touch. They're one of the best in Canada for tanning. And we book through them. You get your pre-tan, and then you also have your second tan, and you also have an option of a touch-up tan in case, you're posing and you start sweating and it kind of messes up your tan. You can do a little bit of a touch-up tan as well.
Yeah.
And posing trunks you'll definitely need. The posing trunks, the board shorts are not that expensive at all. You don't need a high-end one. Just make sure it meets the requirements for the stage. The bikinis, though, man, oh man, I'm telling you, those can be quite pricey. They can range from $300, $400 all the way up to $1,500.
Yeah, I know for sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely a lot more pricey for the women.
Especially with like hair and makeup, right?
Oh yeah, I didn't even count that in yet. Yeah, and plus the tanning they have to do, as well. So it all adds up, and then you also have to make sure that you have your meals for the day with what your coach is.
Yeah, I think like a good quality cooler like a cooler bag or like a big like camping cooler.
Thermal bag. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And you
because
can
those are
get
things you don't think about. Because like couple days before your show, you're like, oh shit, I need to bring my food. You know what I mean? And then like 3 days before your show or 4 days before your show, you're out at like Walmart trying to pick up a cooler to bring all your
yeah.
food, to bring all your meals with you, right? So
Amazon has good ones too, guys. Amazon has good ones. You don't need a high tech one. I hate it when people get the brand name ones. Just get one that's going to do the job.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
one that's going to hold your meals. And in some places too, some people I know bring their rice cooker. In case they can't. It just depends on which city or you're driving into. But I know a lot of people they bring, a rice cooker, their
Oh,
meals, a
another
frying.
thing, another thing I just thought of right now was like warm up gear and stuff like that, like bands. You can bring like a set of dumbbells
Yeah,
because like
yeah,
because
yeah. I
when
was
you're
just
warming up
yeah, there.
backstage, right, like sometimes the show provides like a little bit of weights, and some mirrors and stuff. But I think that like having your own stuff, like it's better to be over prepared than under prepared. So even if you were to throw like like a thing of 10-pound dumbbells or 15-pound dumbbells with you, and then just bring some like resistance bands, maybe even a mirror, like maybe even one of those like single door mirrors. I think they're only like $10. Even if you were to bring one of those with you, and
Yeah,
just throw it in your car or whatever, right? Like you have it. If you don't use it, whatever. But like
yeah,
being able to like look at yourself before you go on stage, because I know everybody when I went there, they're like, "Can you take a picture of me? Can you take a picture of me? Like I want to see what I look like." And they had like a couple mirrors that were set up, but like it was a
yeah.
line just to get in front of the mirror, right?
Yeah, I would definitely, like you said, I would definitely get yourself a sweater and trap pants because man, you will be cold. You're down to
Uh,
single digit body fat, and when you get a tan, oh my lord, guys, it's a cold, cold blast of air on your skin,
I
and you're
know
gonna
it's
be cold
horrible.
anyway. You're gonna be cold anyway. Bands, workout bands. Definitely get ones that are like 10, 15 pounds resistance. Again, you're not working out completely. You're just
Some of
the
them
muscle.
you can get the varying resistance ones. So all you do is change the band. Like I
Yep.
think like they have like three different types of bands. So those
Yep.
ones are really great because then you can, if you're doing like back, you're trying to warm up your back or something versus your side delts, like just having more options. And I think like the pump up is definitely underrated.
And definitely, yeah, I would definitely wear a sweater and trap pants in case you're drinking water or you spill it and it's like, oh no, it's ruined your tan. No, it'll just get all over your sweater. Better to be safe than sorry, guys, because you don't want to have your tan ruined 10 minutes before you go on stage, right? I would also say bring an extra pair of flip flops in case they get stolen or they get wet or wrecked. You can never be too over prepared, but definitely bring an extra pair of essentials that you'll need. And for traveling, I'm just gonna say in general. So I know some people that bring they have a stovetop cooker. They bring their rice cooker. A lot of hotels will have a microwave. You can even request that if you're traveling abroad. If they have a
Yeah.
microwave or an oven, you may have to pay a little extra, but it does the job. But you can get them all portable too. Again, Walmart, Amazon, guys. You don't have to go driving 50 kilometers everywhere to get it. So you
No,
definitely, yeah,
it's just knowing that you need it, right? I think that's the most important thing because the worst thing is when you can't order on Amazon if you need it last minute, right? So it's like going on Amazon's ideal, like, and I think that's the number one thing. That's why it's good to kind of like be informed and like research it before you actually do, because you're going to be running into problems and not everything's going to go as planned. You know what I mean? Like, what if you
exactly.
get a hotel that doesn't have a microwave, or what happens if like the microwave doesn't work? So it's like just being able to understand like what you need. You know what I mean? It's like what can go wrong will go wrong, especially if it's a day of your show and it's like that's a very stressful time on its own, and you don't want to make it like more stressful than it has to be. So in terms of like your other things, like anything that you can order on Amazon 100% because it's going to be way better and cheaper. But anything that like you think you might need that you just rather pick up, I think just knowing what you need is absolutely key, because there's a couple things when I was going through that, like, you know what I mean? I would just kind of piece together and be like, oh crap, I forgot this, or I need this, or what am I going to do with this? And then I had to kind of like, it kind of stressed me out way more because I had to go and get somebody to pick them up because I wasn't in any condition to kind of go pick them up. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. So yeah, that's kind of just a couple things. I just figure it's important to kind of go over a couple things.
And, and and definitely one thing too, you can never be unsafe with having a little extra cash on you, just in case. Just in
Yeah,
case. If you want to buy a shirt or something, there's a boot there, or in case you have to pay an extra fee for whatever the heck happens, you have the cash there on hand. Just take cash though. Don't worry about with the credit card, because if you lose one $20 bill, it's easier to replace than a credit card or Visa card.
Yeah.
So especially when you're traveling abroad, be mindful of that, dude. Take enough cash for you, just as a reserve, just in case you need something else extra.
Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick 15 to 20-second break, and then we're going to be right back. All right, guys, so we're back after that 15 to 20-second break. So where we left off was basically the things that you need for the show. So just a couple other things that come to my mind is like the music. You're going to need some type of like drive, or like if you're doing some type of posing routine, you're going to have to make sure you have your music with you. So I think like an external hard drive. Sometimes what you can do though is you can upload the music directly to the site. So like if you're doing a show, sometimes they have a spot, but they also do recommend that you bring the music with you. Just in case there's issues. So like you definitely want to make sure that you have like some type of like small USB thing, or even like a disc, depending on what you do. I think like some things require a disc, and some require like the USB. So just make sure that you read into that whatever show you're doing. But that's one thing that you wouldn't really know, right? Like until you did a show. So I think it's good to kind of have an idea that you will need something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So another thing that comes to my mind is like coaching. You're going to probably need a coach for the show, especially if it's your first time. So that's another cost, paying a coach to help you prepare for the show. So that's another thing that comes to my mind is just the cost of the coaching, whatever service that you're paying for the coaching, and who you're coaching, depending on, who you choose to get, their level of experience. So is there anything else that you think that comes to mind for like the show? Like anything else you think you might need?
Just a little emphasis on coaching, not too much, but in a nutshell, with coaching, you definitely want to do research on your coaching. Like if they do natural, if they do unnatural, if they do both, who they emphasize, who they spend more time on, coaching. Definitely, obviously you want to, like I say, quote them, quote different coaches with their fees that they charge, right?
Yeah.
Do a little bit of a background check, like who they coached in the past, how many athletes they've coached in the past, how many athletes that actually reached the higher levels, if that's your goal. Again, if your goal is to be an IFBB pro, definitely get yourself a coach that has coached amateurs to IFBB pro level. But again, even if you just want to stay regional or amateur, but definitely still get yourself a coach, because again, you want to make sure you get the job done right.
Yes, I 100% agree. Especially if you're doing your first show, like maybe when you're a little bit more experienced, like I wouldn't say you don't need a coach, because I think like a coach is 100% necessary for like the fine-tune adjustments that you might not be able to make yourself. And like having somebody, it's always good to have another set of eyes on you, and to have somebody else, because like things that you're looking at might not be what you're actually looking, because you're so used to looking at yourself. You know what I mean? So like once you have somebody else assess yourself, then you're like, oh, well, if you just did this, and like that would help way better. Or like if you did this, and it's like things that like you wouldn't necessarily take notes on unless somebody else mentioned who had a little bit more experience, like looking at your body. And I think like your first coach is not going to be your last coach. So like I think like, I mean, it could be, but generally it's like it takes someone a while to get, like personally, it takes you a long time to get used to your own body. So imagine having somebody that you're working with. It's going to take them a while to get used to your body. So you can't expect your coach, no matter his experience level. I don't think you can really expect the coach to know your body inside and out, because everybody's 100% different and unique. I mean, they're going to do a much better job because they've got more knowledge. But I think that like they have to take time to learn your body as well. So maybe it's kind of good to find. I think that goes on the importance of finding the right coach, because if you find the right coach, then you're able to stick with him, and then you're able to kind of have patience to help him, like to be able to like stick with him long enough that he's able to understand your body, right? Whereas if you get like a bad coach, then you're not going to want to rehire him if you plan to do another show, and then you're gonna have to hire somebody else who never had experience working with you.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's another important part.
And again, too, like near the end of the video, I know a couple coaches who I come in contact with who are really good friends that I know. Some are not good, like some I don't know personally, but some I know that are really good coaches that have coached athletes to really high peaks. At the end of the video, I can give you like 4, and then we could put them on like at the bottom of the YouTube, like over in the link, just so they can research them themselves, just like as an added reason, just as an added source. Right?
That'd be great. Yeah, no, that's awesome, because like that's another thing is like where to find a coach, right? So I think like
And
the more
posing
knowledge
coach
that you
too.
have. What's that?
I know a good posing coach too. So
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like so what you can do is you can just send it to me after the podcast.
yeah,
And then I'll put it in the description and I'll include that. So you can actually find that down in the description. That's where I'll put it. If you're interested, definitely reach them out because I highly trust you. And I think that in terms of my coach, I was working with two, so I'll put Patrick McGinnis down at the bottom because I would highly recommend him in terms of that. But yeah, we'll just kind of put some links in the description just in case. And same thing with like maybe the shorts and stuff, just like some websites. They'll all be down in the description as well. Like if the CPA and the WNBF, like if you're looking into those two federations, I'll put their websites down there.
even for women, I know a good even for women, I know a good bikini site that a lot of people go to. It's very popular.
Okay, awesome. That's awesome. See, that's what I'm saying. That's why I love talking to other people, right? And that's why I think it's great in terms of a value perspective because there's things that like you learn over the course. And I think that a lot of people going into their first show might not be aware of this. And like the more that you know, the better, right? Like you could be competing for however many years, and you're going to learn something new every time you compete. And I think that goes back to what you said, like talking to people who are in the sport and immersing yourself in. And that's why I love doing these type of podcasts with people and connecting with people because I'm trying to connect with people, like I said, that fit the value of the podcast. But I mean, like I've learned so much. So this is my third person on the podcast. Actually, no, fourth person. And then over the course of having those four people on, every time I've had a conversation with somebody, I've learned and I've grown. I've grown and I've actually discovered something that I wasn't aware of. So it's like I think and I think that relates to competing as well. It's like the more you're able to immerse yourself in the culture, the more you're able to like talk to people who do it. The more you're able to show up, like even at shows that you're not competing in, showing up at like that Grimes Classic, like you mentioned, you're going to that just to spectate. And just to watch it. And I know that you would do that with other shows as well, but I think that's extremely important. Don't think that you have to go to a show only when you're competing. Same thing with like expos and stuff. Like, I mean, they are expensive. It's all a cost. But I think it's 100% worth it. And I think that if that's what your hobby is, if that's something, maybe it's more than a hobby, maybe it's something you want to make a profession and you want to turn it into some type of profession. I think that it's great. And like, I think you should totally spend the money on those things because those are the things that are going to make you better. And you're going to be communicating with people. You're going to be networking. You're going to be chatting with people. Everybody has a story. Everybody has like motivation that they're willing to give. Like your story of being diagnosed with Tourette's and stuff like that's probably really inspiring for a lot of people that you're able to kind of, deal with that while you're doing just like training and stuff like that. So I think that being able to deal with whatever you're going through, like everybody has a unique perspective and everybody has a reason to why they started. And I think it's extremely important to like, that when you're in a bad spot and you're in a bad mood or maybe you're feeling motivated, it's like there's somebody worse off than you are. And there's somebody that's still killing it. You know what I mean? That's still doing what they have to do day in and day out. So I think that's just kind of a little bit of motivation, I guess. But
exactly. We're here to motivate and as well as educate. So
and inspire. The three values. That's what I love. That's what I love about the podcast, right? And that's what I love about talking with people is just being able to kind of like learn myself while also being able to give back to other people and provide value. So yeah, now that we've kind of covered, so now just to kind of overview, now we're going to go more into the training side of things. So just to kind of give you an overview, we've decided whether or not you should compete. So you choose that you should compete, you figure out what your class is, you find the right show, you've got everything that you need or everything that you think that you need for the show. You found a good coach or you've looked into coaching and you have somebody in line. Now comes in terms of your training. So before we actually get into the training part of it, I think the number one question we should ask is like, how long do you think like your show prep process should be?
Yeah, it just depends on how far out you are, and again, depends on what your goals are. I mean, if the basic average competition prep is about 16 weeks, be about 16 weeks. It can be 12, and again, that just depends on where your body is at that point of prep. I would recommend doing a 16-week prep just because especially if it's your first time doing it, I would give yourself 2 extra weeks to give yourself adjusted to the diet. See how your body responds to certain foods. And again, especially if you haven't done it for a while or you're going to a new division, give yourself extra cushion, guys, because if you have a food that you start with, let's say honey gives you the digestion issues or whatever, and then it might be too late to substitute that up because your physique is already changing.
Yeah.
I would definitely get in touch with your coach. Say, hey, coach, I want to start this 2 weeks before. I want to see how my body reacts to certain foods you've given me over the first 2, 3, 4 weeks. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, you still have time to adjust, and that way you don't mess up your physique overall. It's better to do it early in prep or before prep rather than in the middle, because once you do it in the middle, you're screwed because your body can respond negatively or positively taking out one thing. So I would definitely start early. Give yourself extra, as what I like to say, insurance or cushion room, just to be safe. Because you're spending a lot of money and you want to do it right. Right?
100% agree. Yeah.
So make sure, and again, it comes down to preparation is key. Make sure you start early.
Yeah.
Thank me.
I think that's like anything that you do, you want to make sure that like the earlier the better in terms of just preparing. So like in terms of when I did my first show, that was the mistake that I made. I was like probably I will link the video series to the video. You can check out the Road to Atlantic Classic. That's actually a series that I created on my YouTube channel. Basically, that documents my whole journey to my first show. So you can check that out. But when I first started my prep, I think I was 220 pounds or 225 pounds. And I was overweight. Like I had an excess amount of body fat. It was my first show. Like I knew that I could be leaner, but until I decided that I wanted to do a show, that was basically like my first cut as well. Like that was the first time where I was in like a very extended amount of deficit, other than just like doing a body recomp and like working out, like and changing my body because I was a complete newbie to lifting. But like basically I went down and I got, like I said, I got to 168 pounds. So I think that's like, so 165 pounds would be like 35 pounds. So that was like 55 pounds of weight loss is what I did. And I did that in 13 weeks. So that's what I was saying. I jumped in the fire, right? Like I basically just immersed myself and I didn't prepare as much as I should have. But that was just who I am in terms of what I wanted to do at the time. I was stuck in my ways and I wanted to do it. And I found a coach who would support me, that would like help me get there. So then as soon as I found the coach, I was just like, you know what, I'm dead set on this. I'm doing it. I signed up for the show like 14 weeks out. And then it took him a week to like get the plan together and get everything going. And then I was 13 weeks out and I was 220 pounds. And then since then I was just like, I lost a crap ton of weight, but I also lost a lot of muscle, right? Like, cause I was doing a crap ton of cardio. I was obviously in a deficit, like a huge deficit in the end there. Like, it was just like, I did the best that I could with the weight that I had on and like what the weight that I needed to get down to. But I think that starting earlier is better. And then, like I mentioned, you can check that series out on my YouTube channel, but now I'm doing a new series. It's called The Road to the Pro. And basically that's one of my goals of mine is to win my pro card in natural. So like I'm going to be competing. My next competitive season is going to be next year. So 2021. What my goal is to do like a bunch of shows. So I'm basically doing, I'm doing a full year prep, which is absolutely, you might think that's long. But what that prep is, it's not me being in a deficit for like one full year. It's me phasing my training. So I'm periodizing my training. So I'm going to be continuing that whole year of prep is a bulk and then like a mini cut and then like a maintenance phase and then finally like a weight loss phase. So there's different phases within that whole year. But now that I know that like where I should be, I'm able to periodize my training and I'm able to kind of set a plan up. So then I know next year where I want to be and how I'm going to actually get there in terms of my training and my nutrition. So that series is going to be super long on my channel. It's going to be more of like, I'm actually going to be doing a video later today on a pole workout. I'm going to the gym and I'm going to be filming a full day of eating. And that's going to be part of that. Yeah, that's going to be part of that series. So that's called The Road
to the Table, my friend. It's what they call in sports. You're running the table.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, I'm looking forward to doing that. But so basically what I meant to summarize is like that full year prep is basically like me organizing my training. So I think that kind of transitions us into our next point in terms of the preparation process. So in terms of like sometimes like, I think like when you're working with a coach, I'll let you speak on this a little bit, but like, in terms of like working with a coach, sometimes it's like the plan is the plan and you're just following it and you're given what you're given. And you don't really question it. And like, because if you're working with somebody who's experienced and that knows what they're doing, you basically put all your trust in them. And I think that's another thing when like going back to looking for a coach, I think you need to find someone that you can trust. because they do have a lot of control and they do have a lot of responsibility on your body, especially from a health standpoint, right? Like cutting a lot of calories is definitely hard on your body. And it puts yourself like through a lot of stress to begin with. So I think, I think you need to be able to trust them. But like, for example, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on this. So like when you're doing a contest prep, are you responsible for your training or do you have a coach that's dealing with your training?
Oh no, I always have a coach. Always have it. Off season, not so much because I do my own thing, but contest prep, always have a coach. Always. Again, because like you said, you need that set of eyes. What you may not see, they will see.
Yeah. So in terms of like the off season, so like so what I mean by that is like in terms of where I'm at right now, like I'm periodizing my training in terms of like doing my own training program because I feel like I can do that for myself, right? So when it comes to like my training, I've always been pretty responsible for my training, and it's normally just the diet that the coach really helps me out with, and the check-in and the posing, and all the things that I feel like I need help with, because I enjoy the training aspect. Like I enjoy making my own programs, and I do that for clients as well. Like I do that online fitness coaching. So it's like in order for me to do that, like I have to kind of be able to do it for myself and learn myself and then be able to apply it to other people. So I kind of like the process of doing it for myself. So where I'm going with this is basically like periodizing your training. So in terms of your off season, how do you approach, just kind of relating this into training. So how do you approach like an off season? What period, do you periodize your off season as all, or how do you treat your off season training?
To be quite honest, man, it's quite basic. I just eat clean the majority of the week, eat high, good protein, clean foods. And then Saturday or Sunday is my cheat meal. I don't necessarily have a cheat day. I don't cheat day because I'm already getting excessive amount of calories in through the off season throughout the entire week anyway.
Yeah.
Because if I do that, I'll really throw my body out of proportion. Even though I have a high metabolism, I gotta watch how much fats I eat. So I have a cheat meal, and I have a cheat meal instead of a cheat day, unless I did something like if I did 2 weeks where I ate strictly clean and then Sunday was football with my family, then I would have a cheat day. I could handle that because I know my body can handle those calories. And then that day would be my rest day, and Monday back to full throttle. So it really wouldn't affect my body weight at all. It would just keep me a lot fuller and give me a lot of energy. Training wise, I train 6 days, sometimes 7, but 7 days usually a lighter day, like a recovery day or whatever. And it's just basic training. The only thing I'm hitting twice a week right now is just chest and arms. Everything else is okay right now. Chest and arms are the main goal to bring up. And but yeah, other than that, man, I don't complicate it. I just keep off season to myself, and yeah, that's it. Just eat clean and train hard, man.
Yeah. So in terms of transitioning that, the reason why I ask is because that's what you're currently doing now. But in terms of like doing a prep, I think a lot of people like will start changing their training dramatically and start doing all this. And it's like, that might be the wrong approach because like you're so used to doing what you're doing. And I'm not saying you shouldn't change your training split, but like, you know how your body responds to a certain split. So like, why change it, right? If it's working. So in terms of like periodizing my training, it's like, I'm going to be going through different phases. So like I have like a hypertrophy phase and then I have a strength phase. So I basically like prepare my body to be able to like handle those different phases and how I'm going to actually organize them. So right now I'm currently like in a hypertrophy phase and that's my bulk. My bulk has been like a push-pull legs. It's a modified push-pull legs. And basically I'm just managing my volume, or I'm trying to manage my volume the best that I can. But when it comes to actually doing my series now that I'm doing, I'm actually doing a way better job of that. I'm actually planning out my training. I'm planning out a little bit of the exercise selection, like which exercises I'm going to do. But like generally, I think it's just about managing volume because it kind of goes back to recovery. And like you need a period where you're kind of allowing your body to kind of like reset, I guess, and like be like I have a hard time saying this word, like resynthesize your body to like being able to respond to. Yeah, I have a hard time with that word. Every time I try to say it, I screw it up, and I always try to avoid it in videos because it's like aluminum or like one of those weird words, right? But anyway, so it's like you need a phase where you're basically decreasing volume to like to make your muscles respond to the training again, right? So I'm slowly starting to be able to like phase my training and periodize my training, and like being like such a long time out, being a year out, or 12 months out. I'm basically just it's gonna be like I got like 2 or 3 months prepared, and then like it could change as I go. And that's the thing with the plan. It's like it's always tentative to change. But I think that like the biggest thing that I bring up in those videos is like this plan that I'm doing could 100% change, or maybe I won't do this type of approach, or maybe I'm not losing the weight that I want to lose. So like the calories could get adjusted. But I think that you're better off to have a plan in place, and then change as you need it, because you get to learn yourself, and you get to kind of have like, the more you can learn about yourself and the more you can do that, I guess, and like do it yourself. Like in terms of all these videos and putting through the content, like I learned how to edit videos myself. I learned how to like film the videos. I like, it's just like, I think the more that you can do yourself and the less you rely on other people, the better. And that's kind of why, that's kind of the approach I take for training. Whereas with nutrition and dieting and like contest prep, I 100% think that like a coach is like 100% necessary. But that's just kind of my process, or that's kind of my thoughts on like the training aspect. I just like being able to program my own training, because I get training programs and I'm just like, I don't want to do that. Like, I'd rather do this. And then I always have to ask, and then they're like, yeah, sure, go for it. Right. Yeah. And it's just like, yeah. So that's kind of what my thoughts are. So in terms of like prioritizing your training, like so in terms of like a typical training, like how does your training normally go for like, I guess kind of like give us some examples of your current, of some of your past training with like a show prep, I guess, just so you can kind of talk a little bit on that.
Well, definitely with off season, you could do a lot more higher volume training, whereas pre-contest, the volume is cut down quite a bit, but you still want to keep the muscle as dense as possible. So the compound list will still stay for a certain period of time, up to a certain point of where you're completely depleted, and then you're just mostly going for conditioning the last like 5-6 weeks. Again, depending on where you are. Yeah, but I know the first 8 weeks is a lot of free weights, again, to keep the density and the muscle mass, because you definitely want to keep as much as you can while dieting. And again, your carbs will drop, your fats will drop, your sodium levels will drop, but your protein will always remain high, because again, the protein is what keeps the muscle dense and connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then of course you get the carb cycling and the fat cycling. That'll change periodically, again, depending on where you are. But then again, it's to be expected, but definitely once you reach about, I'm going to say about 5-6 weeks out, that's when they start going for more conditioning, and the cardio steps up. Then the water goes a little bit less, the sodium drops, of course. So, and then of course, peak. We all know what peak week's about.
Yeah, no, for sure. So in terms of like, I guess, in terms of your training, I think like what would you recommend for somebody who's doing their first show? Let's just say that they didn't have a coach, and they were doing their first show and they wanted to do the training, and they kind of wanted to have like a training approach. Like, what would you recommend for somebody who wants to do their own training? And just like, what would you recommend for that? Like in terms of like exercises, like would you, like in terms of like keeping focusing on the compound lifts, like obviously, like kind of what I mean by that is like when you're doing your first show, you don't really like, everything might be a weak point. Do you know what I mean? So it's like as you do more shows and as you become more experienced, like you can like you mentioned in the off season, now you want to bring up your chest and your arms, right? So those are a little bit of a weak point that for you, in your opinion, right? So it's like those are things that you want to focus on, and you focus them on in the off season. But like for somebody who's thinking about doing a show, maybe they're not there yet, and maybe they're in an off season, and they want to be able. So like, would you focus on more of a balanced workout and just kind of like bringing up everything, or like how would you structure the training in terms of somebody who's looking to do a show or maybe in a contest prep?
Focus on the off season. If your body is not where it needs to be in order to do a cut, then keep on doing the off season. Keep eating a high volume amount of food. Enjoy it while it lasts, because once you start cutting, you're going to be losing all the foods. But you definitely want to You definitely want to have a good amount of size on to file down to finesse your physique. Because again, I'm 6'4", almost 6'4", and I'm 242 pounds. Okay. If I wanted to do class physique and I was only it's the same height but only about 180, I'm gonna shred down to nothing. For me, I definitely need to be over 200 in order to file down and keep and preserve the muscle mass, because if I don't, I'm gonna lose muscle mass along with everything else. So you definitely want to make sure your body your BMI, your muscle mass index is where it needs to be before cutting down for a show. And again, your coach can help set you up with that too. So
Yeah.
if you're not, if your coach says you're not where you need to be and he has experience, listen to him, listen to her, because they know what they're talking about. They want you to do well when they say that. So take as much time in the off season. Don't eat junk food again. Have junk food, okay, once a week, but eat clean, solid, healthy, functioning foods to help you grow in the off season. And then you can see where you are. Give it a year, then you can see where you are. But definitely, and again, take your time with it, because you don't want to deplete yourself to a skeleton, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And then as you cut, like, I remember I thought my arms were pretty, like, big, I guess you'd say. Not big, but I thought, like, I had a lot more muscle mass in my arms. And then as I was, like, dieting down, like, I lost, like, a bunch of, like, arm size, right? And that just goes to show that, like, my arms weren't nearly as big as I thought they were. And, like, obviously as a natural, like, you're going to experience a lot of, like, I wouldn't say muscle loss, but there's definitely going to be a lot more muscle loss. And basically by taking a longer prep, you basically want to limit that the best that you can. And that's why taking a longer off season to be able to kind of like improve is definitely important, and focusing on like your weak points in your off season and really making that count, like really making that surplus of calories count. And if you're like feeding your body junk food and you're just like doing a dirty bulk, then obviously it's not going to benefit you nearly as much. You're not going to be able to put the calories to like a good use to what you could be really optimizing your nutrition to make sure that like you are building the muscle and you are doing everything right. And then the only thing that you might need is just a little bit more time. So I think that like being able to understand that and like not rush into it, I think is big. Another thing that I think is important too is cortisol, like being able to manage your stress, because like, we all know how like stress can like definitely impact. And I think another thing that we didn't talk about was like making sure that like you're financially sound and you're mentally sound in terms of just like you're in a good place. Like when you want to do a contest prep, like you're not moving, you're not switching between jobs, like you're not about to get married, you're not like in a divorce, you're not going back
where you are now.
Yeah, like you're not going back to school, like
right. Yeah.
Make sure that you're kind of like what's going to be going on for the next like 6 months. Or like 8 months, like you know what you're doing for the next 8 months, and like you can prepare to do a show, because like managing cortisol, managing stress, and like being able to like not allow your body, like it's going to affect you no matter what, because when you're in such a low calories and like it's going to be hard to kind of not do that, but you want to be able to,
it's natural. Yeah.
You want to be able to manage that the best that you can. So I think that like from a stress standpoint, I mean, you gotta be able to be realistic with yourself and like give yourself an honest like assessment of like what's going to be going on, and like don't just do a show because you want to do a show. Like make sure it's the right show, make sure it's like you're ready for it, I guess. And like by ready for it,
don't bankrupt yourself for it.
Yeah, don't, especially your first one. Because like there's going to be a lot of costs that are come after. Maybe if you're like 10 years competing and you need a couple points away from the Olympia, you know what I mean? And that's your goal to get to the Olympia. Then maybe you want to bankrupt yourself because like that's important to you, right? And like you made the qualification for the Olympia, like that's a bucket list thing, right? It's like, yes. But if you're doing your first show, you're going to compete. You're going to be competing in a small little show. It's definitely not worth it in terms of just going all in, right? So
exactly.
So now just to kind of finish up on the training part. So in terms of posing, like I think the two things that I want to talk about is just like adding the posing and adding the cardio. So let's talk about the posing first. Like when do you think is important? Like let's say you figure out that you want to do a natural show, and let's say you're like 16 weeks out or 20 weeks out. When would you consider doing the posing, and like how would you practice the posing, and like how would you make time for it, I guess?
I would do posing right after you're done training, because your body is still in working mode. Your muscles are still warm. They're still contracted. They're still working. There's still blood flow in them. Again, if you have a gym that has like my gym, both Crunches and Waterloo and Kitchener have a downstairs and a posing room. If they have it there, take advantage of it. It's free as long as there's no classes going on in between it. Practice your posing. Practice the mandatory poses needed for the category that you're going for. Again, they're all going to do quarter turn to the rights, but they're going to be different poses for each class. And for music posing with music, I believe it's a minute they give you, I believe.
Yeah.
But you definitely want to find music that suits your physique, that suits your personality, and that suits your rhythm. You know, personally for me, I like instrumental music, and because I can flow with my body, my mind flows with instrumental music more.
Yeah.
It just comes natural to me because I sometimes work out with it or I do cardio with it, and I can visualize myself posing with that music, with that certain type of music. So I'm visualizing even when I'm training, when I'm on cardio, I'm picking a song. No, this doesn't work. Okay, this song does. This one's got too much rave. This one's just right. You know, for me, personally, I like the slow, finesse, sensual instrumental music because I just think that, again, it goes back to classic. That's exactly what you guys did. They never did anything like outbursting or explosive, right? So it was everything was fine tuned to a T, and that's why I like classic physique because it's calm, but it can be very it can be explosive in its own way, you know.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to pick because at the end of the day, to sum it all up, we all listen to music. So find music that suits your personality, and then study it. Study it to make sure it fits your physique, and that you are going to prepare for it on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And in terms of like posing, like I'd almost say posing is more important than the actual training, especially if you're new to it, because you're absolutely new to posing. If you're like kind of like condition, like if you're used to doing shows and you're used to kind of like some of the poses, you might be a little bit more comfortable with them. But when in terms of like doing your first show, I would definitely prioritize your posing over your training sometimes, just because like training's going to fall in place. And you're used to making the effort for the training. Like you show up to the gym, like maybe you're training for like 3 or 4 years before you decide to do a show, or whatever habit, like might be 2 years. You've already developed that routine. You've already developed that like consistency with your training. And you've kind of understood like what times work best for you for your training. So I think like you understand that. So I think it's the posing that you really need to start prioritizing because you're not used to doing, like you're not used to tacking that extra 15-20 minutes on after your workout, right? So it's like I think you got to be able to like start like incorporating that into your workouts and make that a priority. And I think that goes back to like people blowing off, like on leg day they might blow off calves, you know what I mean? So it's like they go in and they do their legs and they forget about their calves, or like on shoulder day you go in and you forget about your rear delts. So it's like I think with posing, I think a good thing to get into is like as soon as you get to the gym and get warmed up, do your posing first, just for the first couple little bit, and just get used to doing it. So because I know many times the reason why I say that is because when I first started doing it, I would be like, oh yeah, I'm doing my posing after my workout, right? And then my workout would be end and I'd be like, I don't even want to do posing. You know what I mean? So like I just blow it off. So I think the biggest thing that you could do is even do a little bit of posing at home before you go to the gym. Like don't always necessarily think that you have to do it at the gym. If you can do it at the gym, great, if that works. But I think that like as soon as you wake up every morning, do a little bit of posing. Like find a spot in your home or your apartment or whatever that has like decent lighting, or has a decent mirror, or even go out and buy some mirrors, like whatever you have to do. I think that like just being able to incorporate that right away. Like let's say like you could do it right in the morning and that's the best time that works for you, then do it in the morning and like really devote like a half an hour to just videotaping yourself, recording yourself, and just like you said, going back to practicing with your music, finding your music, experimenting on a couple different tracks. Like don't just settle on one right away. Like maybe try a couple and study like other people's routines and like figure out like different transitions and like really work on the posing. So kind of what I mean is just like to summarize is like I think that like you're so new to posing that it's going to be the hardest to learn. I know for me personally it was, right? And even if you're working with somebody who's helping you do it, maybe they schedule like certain posing. But I think like you should totally pose like I don't know, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, even 7 days a week if you can.
Posing
And I
work out in itself, trust me.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I really like what I did that I found was kind of cool. That might work for some of you guys is like to pick a pose and really focus on it. Like for like, let's say you're in an off season or something. Maybe during a contest prep, you don't have that much time. Like you just kind of need to find what works and kind of like learn it really quickly. But like I find that what helped me was kind of like pick a pose. So let's say it's the front double bicep. So I'd only do the front double bicep for like a week. And I would just make sure I would just like master that, and I would only focus on that pose. And then I'd move on to the next one. So like each week would be a new pose. So then I would try like the side tricep, and I would really master the side tricep and really practice that. And then I would like put them. Then I'd try to put those two together. I just find like picking a pose and really focusing on it, especially if you have a little bit more time in like an off season, then it gets you used to posing in the off season too, because a lot of people put that on the back burner. And they don't do like their check-ins, and maybe they don't want to send pictures, or maybe they don't look like how they look in the off season. But I think like making time for posing all year round is 100% a must, because like you don't just get judged on your conditioning, you get judged on your posing. And you could be, if you're a better poser than the guy next to you, then you're gonna, and you guys look the same, then you're gonna outbeat them, right? Like they're gonna pick you over the guy next to you. So
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, and especially if you don't have the best genetics too, right? Like not everybody has the best genetics, obviously. So it's like being able to like hide your flaws and like show your strong points, right? Like, and you can do that in your posing. So like you can almost make your genetics look better in your posing and picking the right poses for you. I mean, when it comes to like the mandatory poses, like you don't really got that much choice. But there's different ways you can hit the posing to kind of like make it a little bit more appealing. And there's different techniques that you can try you can mess with, right? Like putting more weight on your heels when you're trying to flex your quads, or like going on your tippy toes when you're trying to flex your calves. Just like different things like that can like really help, like cues, I guess you'd say, like posing cues, right? Like being able to find like what we're like, how, like doing a lat spread. I knew like when I first started doing that, I struggled with the lat spread, right? So somebody told me like a really good cue one time, and then as soon as they told me that, like it worked well with me. And then ever since that, I like connected with my lats way more, and I was able to hit the pose way better. But I think like posing for sure, I think that like it should be the number one priority, because that's something that always needs to be mastered, right? So do you have anything else you'd like to add on like the posing just before we kind of move on?
Just practice it year round, man. Have fun with it, because posing can be fun too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of that as like a hassle, I guess you'd say, right? They're like, oh God, I got to pose, but it's like that's what bodybuilding shows are. Like you're not showing up to the bodybuilding thing and working out. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like you love the gym, but if you don't love the pose, then it's gonna be hard. You know what I mean? Because that's what it is. That's what bodybuilding is. It's posing. It's showing off like all your hard work, right? So I think you really got to like learn to love the posing and really like find poses that look good on you, and just I think that's the big thing, right? Just learn to love the posing, right?
Yep, exactly.
So let's move on to cardio now. In terms of like cardio, like how would you do post workout or pre workout cardio? Like how would you structure your cardio in terms of?
You can do you pre-contest. You could do it like as a 5 minute warm up. I know people. They again depends on what you're doing and competing in, but I know people that do a 2-a-day split. So they'll do cardio first thing in the morning, fasted, then do the workout once they load up on their food before the workout, then cardio after again. Or
Yeah,
I know
that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you really need progress, they'll probably implement fasted cardio or cardio first thing in the morning when you wake up to get your metabolism going and boosted. For me, I did a 5 minute warm up on the treadmill, and I went to do my workout, and then I love the Stairmaster, man. I did Stairmaster for probably about the first little while because I was already lean.
Yeah.
Not super lean, but relatively lean by a little bit of body fat and water. Probably about 15-20 minutes after the workout, low intensity, steady state, and then right before the competition, like the last 5-6 weeks out draining, the last 4 weeks out draining, we did high intensity interval training on the Stairmaster, and that was probably for about 25-30 minutes.
Yeah, I think just to kind of hit on that, I think a lot of people like think that they have to do the treadmill, but like there's tons of different options out there for cardio. Like you mentioned, the Stairmaster, there's the rowing machine, there's like the bikes, like there's
the best ones for burning calories, man. It works your whole body.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was always on the treadmill on the incline, right? So
yeah,
that was kind of my thing. Another thing I think is really cool is like weighted vest cardio. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I did a exercise of the week on it actually for Instagram. But basically, what you do is like you wear a weighted vest and you do the cardio.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, I know what you mean.
So it's like the explanation behind it is like when you're doing cardio and you first start doing cardio at the start of your contest prep, like let's say you're 220 pounds, right? The cardio is pretty hard, like it's pretty challenging. But then like once you start getting down to 180 pounds, the cardio becomes easier and easier because you're lighter, right? So if you add that weight back and form like a weighted vest, so let's say you wear like a 30, 40, or even 50-pound weighted vest when you're doing your cardio, it's going to make it as if you were 230 again, making the cardio harder, allowing you to go at like a steady state cardio. So you're burning those calories, preserving muscle, not having to ramp up the intensity of the cardio, just making it more challenging in terms of like progressively overloading on the cardio. I think that's a really cool idea. I've never like tried it out, in terms of a contest prep or nothing. But I would 100% like think I would definitely give it a try in terms of like adding the incline, keeping the cardio the same, but just adding a weighted vest.
Exactly.
And even if you're on like the Stairmaster too, right? Just like anything that you can add to make the intensity difficult. But yeah, like in terms of like the equipment, I think another cool thing that a lot of people think is like your cardio doesn't have to be on the treadmill. It could be outdoor activities, right? Like you can go for a walk with your dog. Like if you have like a dog and it's nice in the summer, if you're doing a contest prep in like the summer, or maybe you live somewhere where it's like nice all year round, like take advantage of that. Like go out, shoot some basketball, join like a recreational activity, like join something that allows you to get a little bit more calories in or like a little more cardio in. So I think that there's different activities that a lot of people don't think of. Like I said, go shoot some hoops, find a basketball court, play some tennis, go play some squash, like different things that you can do that you can burn extra calories that are fun. That's going to take your mind off.
And you're outside too. When it's sunny out, we all know you boost your energy and mood levels.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think that you just don't have to limit yourself to cardio equipment, right? So
there's lots of things you can do, man. Lots.
Yeah. So that's kind of why I thought that was kind of important in terms of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of like the training aspect. Is there anything else you want to sum up in the training before we kind of move into the diet part?
Let's move ahead with the diet, the best part.
All right. Yeah. So the diet's obviously the hardest part for sure. It's probably the part that everyone always struggles with. I mean, training and like your cardio, you just go in and do it, but it's a diet that does require. So in terms of like the diet, I think the biggest thing that you can do from a contest prep, depending on where you are and where you start, is just like not manipulating calories too much. So like don't just cut like 800, 900 calories. Because there comes to a point where you have nowhere else to go, and then you have to start adding cardio, and then you just reach a plateau. So I think the more you can chip away at it, and I think another cool thing that I heard from somebody from actually Evan Sandapani, I'm watching the Build series, which is like him preparing for his show, and he said that basically what he does is like his diet in the off season versus his diet for contest doesn't change. It stays the same. The only thing that changes is like all the little things that he adds to his diet. So like a good example of that, like for me would be right now I'm eating oatmeal every morning for breakfast, but I have peanut butter in it. So like I mix a little bit of peanut butter in my oatmeal. If I was doing a contest prep and I wanted to cut some extra calories, I'd still have the oatmeal. I would just eliminate the peanut butter. Yeah. So I think that like the diet should stay the same. It's just because you're used to eating it, you know how your body responds to it. I think by like substituting like way too many new food items in and things that you're not really used to like eating, I think it creates like if you were to switch from rice to potatoes, right? And like you never really ate potatoes a lot in your life, and like you just decided to make that change. Like God knows how you're going to respond to potatoes, or like you switch veggies from like green beans to broccoli, or like it's something like that, right? Like just be able to stick to like what you know. And try to keep your diet as intact as possible as you can, and try to look for different ways to cut calories. Just try to find calories that are in your diet that you necessarily don't need, and maybe throw in some other things to help, like more healthy options. So maybe more like greens, more spinach, like higher volume food that allows you to eat more volume, like spinach. As much as everybody hates it, like you can eat a crap ton of spinach. And if you're just snacking on it, like it's much better to be able to have higher volumes food that you can eat like more of, but like less calories. So just try to find those things in your diet that like take up a lot of calories that necessarily don't leave you feeling full, that have like a lot of added sugars, and that are extremely processed, like things that basically just go in and out. You definitely want to make sure that you're including like high nutritious foods. But I think another thing, just like really like nutritiously dense foods. And I think another thing is like being able to plan for like cheat meals, diet breaks, things like that. Like if you like, that's why the preparation process is so important, and like periodizing your training and periodizing your diet is because you can plan for those things. Like you can plan for diet breaks, like where you kind of bump your calories back up, eat at about maintenance, and then kind of reduce them again to kind of like to give your body like a switch. So like it says, oh, well, I was on this, now he's bumping it up to this. So it's like it keeps your body guessing and allows you to like stop plateauing and burn more calories, right? So I think that like, and then like keeping a refeed day in. Like let's say right now you have like maybe you do have let's say you have 2 cheat meals a week. Well, maybe limit it to 1 cheat meal, but still keep that 1 cheat meal, right? Until it comes down to crunch time where it's like you're just completely cutting calories and then like nothing goes and all you're eating is basically like keto. You're eating like barely any carbs, like proteins and like a little bit of fats. And you're on very minimal calories because you're just like worried about conditioning. And depending on like where you are with your prep, like if you're behind or if you're like ahead of your prep, I think that all takes into consideration. But what are your thoughts on like cutting calories or just calories in general when it comes to a contest prep?
Carb cycling worked for me personally because of my height and my weight. But a lot of coaches will do carb cycling because your body still needs carbs, whether you're pre-contest or off season. It doesn't matter. And again, your body will change as the diet changes, and when your body doesn't respond to a certain thing in the diet, then that's the part where you say, "Hey, coach, this hasn't been working for the past week. Can we switch it up?" Because let's be honest, you're throwing all these things at your body, and your body's trying to respond as fast as possible. This is why carb cycling worked good for me, because my body got used to a high carb day, or 3 low carb days, 1 high carb day, 1 very low carb day, 2 medium carb days, and another high carb day. So carb cycling is definitely, I think, one of the best options for dieting for a show, up until peak week, obviously, where it's just completely low carb or no carb for a week to draw out everything. Keto, I would definitely keto, unless you're like 80 pounds over, then but don't do keto, because you'll wreck your body on keto. Competing for a show. I'm not saying just for weight loss, but for competing for a show.
Yeah.
I would personally, for me, and I don't know any coaches, I would recommend keto, unless again you're like 80 pounds or 50 pounds from where you need to be before you start cutting for a show.
Yeah. So in terms of carb cycling, like, would it be kind of like, do you kind of mean like just alternating carbs in terms of like having a higher carb day? Would that be considered like the same thing as like a refeed day, but you're just kind of like cycling refeed days? Is that kind of like, do you know what I mean? Would that be kind of like a way to carb cycle, would be to have like maybe 3 like low days and then like 1 high day where you have higher carbs, and then like eating like a refeed? So basically you're like prioritizing like good quality carb sources versus like cheating. Is that kind of what you mean? Yeah.
Refeeds are kind of like a cheat. Again, I think a lot of people do refeeds to just give your body a bit of a break, especially if you've been doing like a lot of low carb days. Or a refeed or a cheat meal would definitely be beneficial there. Some people would do, I don't know if they do a cheat day. Don't quote me on that, but I definitely know refeed and cheat meal are definitely the most common ones, because again, your body needs a break, and sometimes your body will get tighter from a refeed or a cheat meal.
Oh yeah,
right?
No, for sure. It'll make you less fat, or not fat, but flat for sure. Like if you're like being really, really flat, and then they notice that, like what you could do is you could definitely include like a refeed or a cheat day to kind of get those extra little calories in to kind of make you like less flat.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, also going from gym performance to like to help improve your gym performance, because we all do know how important like carbs are for like allowing you to give energy that you need in order to like still be able to train at the higher intensity during your prep to be able to like build like a dense muscle. Like, because it's the heavy compound movements. It's like those are the real bang for, like, that's the best bang for your buck. And like a lot of people neglect them in their training. Like they're like, oh, well, I'm on lower calories, I'm not going to be doing deadlifts, or I'm not going to be doing squats. It's like those are the days when you need to go in and do those squats when you're on the lower calories, as much as your body hates it, or as much as you think your body hates it, as much as you don't want to. I think it's being able to develop that mentality and that mindset to put your feelings aside, put your mood aside, and be able to just go in there and crush a workout and train. And I think that that's what separates the people that are able to do it and that are able to excel in it versus the ones that actually don't. It's the people that are able to go in when they don't want to go in, still be able to put an honest effort forward and knowing that they left nothing on the table whatsoever, versus using the excuse that you're in a contest prep and that you don't want to put that extra plate on deadlifts because you don't want to go too heavy because you're in a contest prep. And I think that, like, from a risk to reward ratio, you might be a little bit more susceptible to an injury. But at the end of the day, it's like you want to know that you gave it your all during the contest prep. And there's no worse feeling than like after you put all that effort into a prep, knowing you could have did it better. And I think that comes into like being able to like cheat on your diet. Like that's so popular. Like lying to coaches, telling the coach that like you didn't have this and you didn't have that, and like you didn't have a handful of chips, or you weren't eating a peanut butter, or like whatever you're craving, right? Like it's such like it's such a hard mentality to get over. Like I know personally for me, I cheated. Like I'll be the first one to admit it. Like I cheated multiple times on my contest prep, and that affected my conditioning, right? And like it's just such a hard thing not to do as much as you want it. And I think like knowing what I did now, it's like going into my next contest prep, it's going to be 100% strict. Like I'm going to have a way better mindset and way better attitude towards it. But I mean, just having that in the back of your mind that like there'd be nights where I couldn't sleep because like I knew that I cheated on my diet. Like I had that handful of chips and I'm guilty, and like I feel guilty and I feel shit, and like I'm just like, why did I do that? Like I shouldn't have done that. Like I didn't need those chips, and like it was just like it was a terrible like back and forth battle between. And that kind of leads us into our next point in terms of just like being able to like have the mental aspect, and like being able to have that like mindset of being able to self motivate yourself when you need it, like being able to have those pick me ups and like find motivation. Like those days that you don't want to go in and train, like find a song, find a playlist, find a new music, find a show, or find a prep series, something that like gets you up. Rewatch like some Arnold, or like whatever you have to do. Like find something to get you in the gym and motivate you, because not every like just like with anyone's training, there's going to be days where you want to cheat. There's going to be days that like you don't want to stick to the diet, or you don't want to do this anymore. You want to give up. And I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to your mindset.
It does.
And your mindset's way more powerful than any muscle in your body. And being able to control your mindset and get yourself into the right frame of mind. And at the end of the day, if you win or you lose, it doesn't really matter. It matters about your mindset. It matters about what you're taking into the show, like what your approach was to the show. Because if you plan to win and you go in and you don't win, then that was your mindset going in, that you wanted to win and you didn't do it. So it's going to affect you, versus if you just want to get to the show and do well. I think that you've already won, right? Because you've already got to the stage. So I think that before you even do a contest prep, you need to evaluate your mindset. You need to figure out what you want to get.
Exactly.
What you want to get from doing the show. Like, are you doing it just because you want to do it? Are you doing it because you want to do this forever? Is this something that you're interested in doing the next 10, 15 years where you're just going to be competing? And I think you need to really figure that out. And like, maybe not your first show, but just have an idea and just get your mindset right and figure out like why it matters to you, why you're passionate about it, and just knowing that like doing the show is better than cheating. Do you know what I mean? Like coming into the show the way that you want to look is worth it, and not cheating on your diet, and being able to give an honest effort in your training.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of like what is there any tips that you would kind of give for somebody's mindset to kind of improve your mindset, or just anything that comes to mind in terms of that that you could think?
Yeah, just watch YouTube videos, listen to motivational podcasts. Spotify has a bunch of them. iTunes, if you have, download some on your Google Music on your Android. Listen to some really highly motivating motivational podcasts from athletes. It doesn't have to be bodybuilding, but athletes in general, what they went through, their struggle, to really give yourself a pick me up. Because then again, to sum it all up for this subject, is that it all starts up here. And you don't want to give yourself too much high expectations, because then you're setting yourself up to fail. You want to plan to win, but you mainly want to plan to win, not just necessarily win the competition, but you want to win for yourself by getting on stage. Because let's be honest, the majority of the public cannot do what we do.
No, that's true. Yeah.
That's the truth. So just stay motivated. Get yourself a big support group that supports you in what you're doing. That's, I think, the biggest one. And have them be on your behind about you cheating and you slacking and you having not this, because in the end you're going to need it, especially 4 weeks out of the competition. So just try and get everything negative out, block it if you can, and put more positive in. So it'll help. You definitely got to train your mind for everything.
Yeah.
And my battery's on 10%.
What's that?
My battery's on 10%.
Okay.
I have it charged, but I think Skype is just eating it.
Okay. So we're almost done anyways. We just have a couple more topics. So in terms of like, I guess we'll kind of move in just some quick diet tips that I'd like to give, and then we'll move into kind of like what you would do after the show. So in terms of like some diet tips, I think like a couple things that I did was I chewed gum. I was a big gum chewer, even though there are a couple calories in gum, especially if you eat the whole pack in one day. But like I think that like chewing gum was big for me because like I would have the same piece of gum in my mouth for a couple hours, and that kind of took my mind preoccupied. Like going back to your mindset, like if you think that you're eating, if you can trick yourself into thinking that you're eating, then maybe you are. So it's like chewing gum kind of helped like for cravings and kind of gave like different flavors. Like I was able to kind of get different gum flavors. And anyways, that kind of helped for me. I think diet soda is another big one. Like I would drink like half a can of like diet root beer. And just to kind of fight those cravings, like those sugary cravings that you get. I think diet sodas and like flavored waters. I think that they're like all great just to kind of like take your mind off.
Crystal Light.
Yeah, Crystal Light. Yeah. So like flavored waters and like diet sodas. I think Walden Farms too is like anything that's low calorie dressings. I think is really good. Like if you can just kind of add anything to your meals to make them taste a little bit better, 100% do it. And another thing that I think is take your mind off prep. So this goes back to like activities, like maybe if like you can kind of find a video game or find a new TV series or anything like that that can kind of take your mind off the prep. Maybe spend some time with like your significant other, like a little bit more time. Like focus on like spending quality time with family and friends versus like always hanging out in the kitchen. Or just maybe finding it, like I said, finding a video game, buy an Xbox, buy like a PS4 or whatever they have now, PS5. I don't know where they're at with that. But like basically buy like a gaming system. Anything that you can do to just to kind of take your mind off food is definitely a diet tip for sure. Because the only thing I know personally for me, if you're sitting home all day or you're working or whatever, you're around food, it's going to be tough just to not eat. And that's the only thing I thought about my whole prep was eating. And like I remember like going through my mind being like, what am I going to eat after I'm done the show, right? Like I can't wait for like the cheat meal, or I can't wait. It's like that's always on your mind. And another thing that I want to give to is like a diet tip would be constipation. I think it's extremely real. And like I remember taking like Metamucil and like making sure that you include a lot of fiber in your diet. I think is extremely important because I got extremely backed up, and that's only natural when you're doing like a contest prep.
A lot of fiber and water.
Yeah. So like having like fiber, like if you have to take Metamucil, I highly recommend Metamucil. That helped me a lot for my contest prep. Because I mean, there'd be a couple days where like I never like did the number 2 or whatever you want to call it. Like that was like 3. There might have been like 2 or 3 days. You know what I mean? And I didn't use the bathroom for 2 or 3 days. And then I was like, there's definitely something wrong, right? So it was a digestion standpoint, and it was just fiber. So like Metamucil helped for sure. So just like those are just some slight dieting tips. And then another thing I want to add too is it's funny that foods that taste good during prep, like when you're off prep, there's things that I wouldn't eat that I would eat when I was on prep. Like for example, like I remember dreaming about like oatmeal. During my prep, I was like, I cannot wait to have oatmeal. You know what I mean? Like oatmeal would taste so good right now. And like now that I'm not in prep, I'm like, I don't even want oatmeal. You know what I mean? Like plain oatmeal tastes horrible, right? Like, but like during prep, it was like I was dreaming of it, right? Because I wasn't able to have it. So that kind of goes back to your mindset, just being able to like get over that and like not allowing because your taste buds are super sensitive when you're like on prep. Like as soon as you come to prep, you like taste everything again. And you're like, oh my God, food is absolutely amazing. Anyways, that was kind of another thing that I kind of wanted to add. So let's move into the last part of it. So in terms of, do you have any other diet tips that you think that comes to mind just before we move on? Anything that like
when you're in prep, stay away from the Food Network channel, people.
Yeah, don't watch cooking shows. Yeah, no, I totally agree there. It'd be tough to work as a cook, right? Like if your occupation is cooking, that would be tough. Because you're around food all day, right? So it's like that's just something you have to deal with, and it might be unfortunate, but I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. I wasn't a cook, so I just feel like it'd be tough if you were like preparing food all day and you couldn't have it. So I guess now that you've competed and you basically did the contest prep and the show is over and you're happy with it, I guess like what do you do after a show in terms of like being able to like benefit on the rebound, adding calories back in and kind of like adjusting your training? Like how would you go about doing that?
Very, very, very slowly.
Yeah.
just to be very quick on this one, if you start consuming your body with extra calories that you've been used to having in a calorie deficit for 16 weeks, you know what's going to happen? You're going to blow right up. You're not going to feel good. You're going to have more digestive issues because your digestive system has slowed down. Your metabolism has slowed down from decreased calories. Now you're increasing the calories so fast that your body's not going to respond. It's just like putting extra data on your computer when it's not used to. It's going to get a virus, or it's going to back up or crash. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to blow up like a balloon and crash. You want to start slowly. I would say eat clean still for the first 2 weeks, and then slowly add a burger, slowly add a cheat here, cheat there. But don't go all out at once because, guys, your body, if your body is used to a very long off season, it's going to stay in the off season mode. If your body's used to contest prep mode, it's going to stay in contest prep mode until you slowly have to change things up. Just like with training, you got to change it up, and you got to go slowly. Even with drinking water, you drink water slowly. Get everything back into the immune system. I would say get your vitamins in your body back first, because that's what the micronutrients are just as important as the macronutrients. It also helps the healing process and speeds up recovery and metabolism. Yeah. So get those back into you first. Start eating whole regular foods again, like regular foods, slowly but surely, and then. Because the last thing you want is a crash. Oh, like I know people that I went out with my last competitor that drank alcohol, and they got sick instantly. Alcohol dries you out, and you're already dried out. So why would you have that, right? Ready? Especially
with like binging on food. Like the one thing I think about is like how much I wanted to eat, like a huge meal after I was done my show, and
because your sees all this food, and then here comes the saying: your eyes are bigger than your stomach.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then like I remember like after I was done my show, I planned for pizza because like that's my number one favorite food probably is pizza. Like so I was like, we're gonna order a pizza like as soon as we're done the show, and we ordered the pizza, and like I thought I was gonna completely demolish it. I've never ate so little. Like I think I had I think I might have had like 4 bites of it, and I just couldn't stomach it because I wasn't used to it. Right. So like I just immediately felt full, and I felt like sick, not sick, but like. Just really like my stomach felt really irritated, right? So I think that as much as you are looking forward to that cheat meal and as much as you want it, most times you can't even eat it.
I'll tell you one thing that I did after my last competition. We went to Boston Pizza. Dude, I was so freaking hungry. I went to Boston Pizza and had 16 quesadillas because each plate had 4. 16 quesadillas and 3 Diet Cokes and a Caesar salad.
You probably put on like 15 pounds that one meal.
I actually woke up only 7 pounds heavier. That's it. And I was at the show. I was 6.5% body fat during show day. Yeah. So I thought I would get sick. I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna get sick. No, my body was like more. But then the next day I'm like, no. We're gonna do whole eggs with turkey bacon. Next meal, cream of rice with honey. Next meal, chicken breast with rice with some sauce. Nothing junky. I didn't eat junk food until my 3rd week post-comp.
Yeah. Another thing I'd like to add on that is I think it's really important, like you said, to have a plan. Like in terms of like having a plan in place after your show. Don't just think because like you mentioned, like you did that one big cheat meal and then you said no, like I need to start eating like good foods again, right? Like to know like that you can do what you want to do after your show and have a couple days. Or maybe even a week, let's say, not necessarily a week, but just like just a week kind of like being more flexible with your dieting. But basically just having a plan in place to know like when you're going to be back on schedule, like just to have that plan to rely on so then you don't completely go off the rails. Because I've heard of people putting on like 50 pounds in like 2 weeks or like 3 weeks, like, you know what I mean? Just completely.
Your thyroid people.
Oh, yeah. Like they just blow up. Like they look like in 2 weeks time, they're up 25 pounds or something, right? And it's just like.
Same thing with training. Just start with high repetitions, get back to the free weight slowly.
Yeah, so I think that like the importance of actually having a plan is absolutely huge. Absolutely. I think. And then that's kind of like just making sure that you have like a plan in place. And then like doing, maybe if you're doing more shows, like if you're staying in a deficit, figure out if you're like, for me, I'm doing a competitive season, so I'm doing multiple shows. So I'm going to have to plan in between those shows of how I'm going to adjust my calories. But I think that just like being able to work with somebody through the off season, or maybe not even, just kind of having an idea of how you plan to rebound and what your goals are going forward. And just having that clear. So yeah, so I think that's pretty much everything. The only thing I would like to add is, do you think everybody should compete natural, like at first, or do you?
That is the $1 million underground question. and you know what? I'm going to be very conservative about this, and I'm going to be honest. Everyone that asks for my opinion, I always say my opinion, and no one else's. Well, what I mean is that I'm just saying for my opinion. I'm not saying that my opinion is best. In other words, I would say start natural, stay as natural as you can. Again, I'm not boshing open bodybuilding, because we all know open bodybuilding is the cusp to get you to, your pro card and your more so IFBB pro level shows.
Yeah.
I would just say stay as natural as you can. Once you know you've hit a sticking point, then you're gonna have to mentally say, okay, am I ready for the next step? To take androgenics or SARMs. To be quite honest, SARMs, there's not a lot of research in SARMs as much as androgenics. So your safest bets with the androgenics, because you know what the side effects are. You know how to do PCT and whatnot. So the information's there already.
Is like to look into a responsible, like find a doctor, or find like have some. Have a professional approach.
I was just going to get to that, where if you want to go to that next level of bodybuilding, go to your doctor, get blood work done, find out what if you're at health risk for anything.
Mm-hmm.
I know for my family, diabetes runs high in the family.
Yeah.
On my grandpa's side, on my own Opa's side, a little bit of high blood pressure, but more so diabetes. But so you have to look at that as well. You got to take that into consideration. And mind you, you can't, with the blood work as well, you don't know when you're going to be at risk for tendon rupture or muscle rupture. It doesn't measure that.
No, that's just kind of unfortunate. That's just things that happen regardless, right? Like if you're in line for something, like people always like link like the side effects for steroids and anabolics to like the fact of using them, but most times it actually comes from like a pre-existing condition, right? So like if your pre-existing condition is like to have a heart attack or something, you know what I mean? Like if that's something that's like very high in your family genetics or your tree, like every one of the men on your dad's side or father, like whatever, died of a heart attack, I'm like, you're prone to maybe having heart issues, and then you end up taking a bunch of anabolics, you know what I mean? Like it could accelerate that condition. And same thing with like hair loss too. Like they say that if you use like a lot of like testosterone, it can help, like it can make you lose your hair, right? But it's like that's not necessarily true. It's only if you've got a previous hair condition, or if like you're prone to losing your hair early anyways, right? So it's like it won't help. Like it's not going to help with your hair. But if you're having a condition with your hair to begin with, it's definitely going to it could make it worse. So I think that going back to what you said is to figure out like your underlying conditions and figure out like before you even go in and think about it. But in terms of like doing a natural show, I think that everybody should do at least one natural show, unless you're in a situation where like your family's in it. Like let's say like the son of Arnold, or like the son of like whoever who's a competitive bodybuilder, and like their father was in it and their uncle was in it, and like they already know what they want to do, or they have pre-exposure to a lot of that stuff. Then maybe you don't want to do your first natural show, because you know that that's the path that's set out in front of you, and it's kind of like your destiny, you know what I mean, I guess, is to follow in that footsteps. But I think from like a health risk ratio, I think that building natural muscle first is extremely important, and like being able to like get pretty close to your genetic limit, or as close as you can, is definitely going to be much beneficial and much healthier and much safer in the long run. And it's going to make you a better athlete to begin with in general, because if you do start to use it, then you're going to be benefiting it from, I would say, like a little bit more than somebody who jumps in it quickly, because you're going to, as you progress in it, like with anything, your body's going to get used to it, and you're going to have to up the doses and stuff. So the more or less you can dose, and the better benefit you can get from it. the safer you are and the better you will be.
Exactly.
So I think that, yeah, going back to what you said, like make sure that you get a doctor, make sure you find out a pre-existing condition, get your blood tested like regularly, make sure that you're not developing anything like onset, or like you get kind of get like a little bit of a warning and you're able to like mitigate it. I think that's a huge thing, right? So
yeah, all I have to say is, just to sum it up nice and cleanly, is just, if you're going to do it, educate yourself, know the risks.
yeah, educate yourself.
Educate yourself, definitely ask questions to your doctor, and start small, because we all know with steroids, a little goes a long way. Start small, and just know that that is the path that you're taking, and it may or may not affect you in the long run depending on how long you do it. But for now, guys, stay natural as much as you can, eat clean, train hard, get your sleep, you know.
Yeah,
we all progress at different speeds, so just take everything slow. Like me, if I showed, and I'll have Mark post my Instagram name on the bottom too, so you guys can follow me and ask me questions too as well, because I'd love to communicate with you guys a lot more.
At the start or whatever, when you introduce yourself, I'm going to also, so like the start of the video, you would have seen his Instagram and all his social media links. So I'm going to put that at the start, and I'll put it here at the end. And every one of your links will be in the description as well, so they can have a direct link to your social media accounts, like your Instagram. And like you mentioned, like totally reach out to me or you if you have any questions in terms of just general advice, because like we both are here for anyone who has questions. So I think that's like great to be able to kind of like bounce questions off. If you have anything in terms of the podcast with questions, I think definitely don't be scared to ask. And as I mentioned, like everything's going to be in the description. Like I'll put like as much material as I can in the description in terms of like links to different videos and different websites that I feel is relevant. So I think that's kind of that's what I will be doing for the podcast. So I think that kind of sums it up good, is just to make sure you educate yourself. And then this is kind of the idea of the podcast, and just be able to provide value. And I wish I kind of had something that was able to take me through the process. So I hope everybody got everything out of the or I hope everybody found some type of value in the podcast and took something away from it. And first of all, I'd just like to thank you for your time, because it does require time commitment. We've been planning this for probably maybe like 2 weeks or 3 weeks now. So it was the process, and it was definitely well worth it. So I definitely do appreciate all your time. And I just love being able to connect with people. So yeah, I'd just like to thank you. And yeah, definitely subscribe to my channel because I do have a lot of other great videos, a lot of new series, and the podcast is just something else that I kind of add to my channel to be able to provide future value. So yeah, definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications, and definitely like the video, as I do release now 3 videos a week. And this is actually going to be just, like I said, the podcast is just going to be coming up as it comes up, and as I connect with people, and as I feel like there's value in them, I'll be basically posting them. But yeah, I think that's going to be it. So definitely don't forget to be inspiring, stay motivated, and continue to push your limits.